Welcome to Whisperer of Madness. If you're enjoying the story, consider liking the video and subscribing. It really helps grow the channel and this community. That finger! Li Changshou felt helpless. He was sitting in the shadows and was practically invisible at this point. Why was this world so cruel to him? There were nearly 8,000 cultivators present. Of the younger disciples, his cultivation level was neither high nor low. After all, some disciples from the minor sects had yet to attain the void refinement realm. Why would the second prince choose him out of so many people? Li Changshou could not understand, no matter what. However, he knew that it was not the right time for him to be lost in thought. He needed to do something to extract himself from this sticky situation. Numerous gazes landed on him, and multiple spiritual and immortal senses probed at him. Fortunately, so long as no one took Li Changshou's hand to check his body, his true cultivation level should not be revealed. However, this did not guarantee that Li Changshou's cultivation level remained hidden from the elders sitting on the suspended platform. At this very moment, Li Changshou was really tempted to press that little dragon called Aoyi onto the floor, force open the dragon's mouth, and stuff some immortal-melting pills and demon-subduing bone-corroding pills inside. Martial nephew Changshou! Martial nephew Changshou! A female immortal of the Immortal Du sect anxiously sent a voice transmission to him. Li Changshou immediately collected his thoughts, lifted his head and looked over. Ahem! A male perfected immortal from the Immortal Du sect cleared his throat, stood up, bowed towards Aoyi standing proudly on the square and said with a smile, "Your Highness, you wish to exchange pointers with our martial nephew Changshou here." "That's right," Aoyi replied impatiently. "I choose him." The moment he completed that sentence, a few voice transmissions entered his ear. "Your Highness, you're mistaken. That person is just in the second stage void return realm." "Your Highness, please choose that lady in red. She is in the 8th stage void return realm." The edges of Aoyi's lips twitched slightly, but he remained unmoved. Li Changshou stood up, cupped his fists at the perfected immortals from his sect, bowed, and said, "Uncle Master, my cultivation level is still low, and my ranking in the sect is not in the top 100. I'm afraid that I will not be the prince's match, and will bring shame to our Immortal Du sect's name. Why don't we let the prince choose from the Immortal Du sect's disciples present once more? An inner sect disciple in the top 10 would be a better candidate. I shall not disgrace myself and the sect." The other 10 Immortal Du sect disciples stood up as well. Xianxia even stepped forward and stood in front of Li Changshou. Aoyi frowned. This cultivator was weak and cowardly. The second prince of the Dragon Palace declared, "I am not changing my mind." "Why? Does the Immortal Du sect look down on the East Ocean Dragon Palace so much?" Li Changshou immediately frowned. Was this fellow still intent on exchanging pointers with him? Where did it go wrong? At the same time, on the suspended platform, the nearly 300 human heaven immortals looked down and stared at the situation below. The close to 100 dragon experts observed the scene with a frown. The old Dragon King was the only one still smiling on the suspended platform, as though he had fallen asleep. He did not seem to care about what was going on below, seemingly having predicted this situation. As Li Changshou hesitated, an uncle master of his turned and smiled helplessly at him. "Martial nephew Changshou, why don't you exchange some moves with the prince?" The male perfected immortal was also afraid of putting Li Changshou on the spot, so he went straight to the point. "The original intention is to let you broaden your horizons. Unexpectedly, the prince chose you as his opponent. Just showcase what you have learned. There is no need for you to go for the win. Simply make sure to not let the prince feel bored about it, that's all." Then, another uncle master sent a voice transmission to him. "Don't worry, martial nephew Changshou. Go ahead and exchange some pointers with him. We will keep our eye on the situation. This little dragon is a prince of the Dragon Palace. He is quite capable. If you feel that the tides are not in your favor, admit defeat immediately. Remember, safety always comes first. Given your low cultivation level, it is okay if you lose. There is no need for our disciples to sacrifice themselves for the sake of the sect's pride." Li Changshou silently sighed, gave a small smile, and cupped his fists at the elders and peers looking at him with concerned gazes. Then, he walked briskly down the stairs and headed towards the square. He decided to do whatever he could accomplish as a second-stage void return disciple. The star today was Aoyi. Li Changshou assumed that the dragon chose him intending to secure a win. He shall fulfill this wish then. After a few moves, he would admit defeat, preferably in an elegant way. "Changshou, martial nephew," Jiu suddenly shouted from the side. She removed the large gourd she was carrying on her back, blinked rapidly at Changshou, and hollered, "You forgot to take your evil-vanquishing Rui sword with you. I'm almost finished with comprehension. Let me return this to you." Changshou momentarily was caught between laughter and tears, but he felt the care and concern this Ant Master of his had for him. The evil-vanquishing Rui sword was a supreme-grade Dharma treasure refined by exalted Wang Qing. It was said to possess the potential to transform into a powerful numinous treasure. This was Ant Master Jiu's natal Dharma treasure. She actually used such an excuse to lend it to Changshou. "I'm heading over to exchange pointers with the second prince." Changshou replied gently, "This exchange is not a life-and-death battle, so there is no need for a deadly Dharma treasure like this." With that, Changshou stepped onto the square, choosing not to accept Ant Master Jiu's gourd. Then his gaze locked with the second princess. The edges of Aoya's lips lifted, his eyes burning with desperation. "Very good, come. Defeat me, the second prince of the Dragon Palace, head-on. Use your full strength to throw a Dharma spell or a kick and punch at me. I will definitely vomit blood like a fountain." Changshou felt uneasy instead for that look in his opponent's eyes. What is he trying to do? Why is his gaze so intense? Is this second prince of the Dragon Palace truly trying to kill me, an immortal Du sect disciple here? Can it be because I am not an immortal seedling, so the immortal Du sect will not react badly even if I am to die? This way, the Dragon Palace can exact some revenge as well. Yes, this should be the plan. I need to exercise caution. Thus, Changshou became even warier. The immortal armor Aoya was wearing let out a bright gleam. He took one step forward with an explosive amount of aura. Changshou was around 300 feet away from him, and the former could already sense that Aoya's life force had locked onto him. He immediately activated his Dharma powers, concealed his aura, and focused on circulating his self-created chi-calming turtle-breathing mantra. This way, his Dharma power fluctuations were completely in tandem with when a second-stage Void Return cultivator exerted their full strength. Then he took half a step forward. The life force of one man and one dragon clashed. "Come!" A streak of light flew across Aoya's blue eyes. He gave up on using the Dharma treasure to initiate a ranged attack and was about to charge forward with the intention of placing his own face in the direct line of punches the weakest disciple of the immortal Du sect threw. "Hold on!" Changshou hollered. Aoya lost his bearings and almost fell face first onto the clean stage. What was wrong? Aoya looked over with a frown. The rest of the spectators were puzzled as well. The fight was about to start, so what was that about? Changshou explained, "Since we are exchanging pointers, we need to set some ground rules first. There should be a righteous and reputable referee to determine the results. We must also create a boundary where we cannot step out of. Without any rules in place, it does not seem to fit into the Dragon Palace's way of treating matters seriously and fairly." "Why is this person so troublesome?" Aoya felt resigned. However, the turtle minister standing at the side felt that Changshou's suggestion made sense and could not be refuted. Indeed, the Dragon Palace failed to make sufficient preparations for this segment. The turtle minister came forward immediately and personally took on the role of a referee, as it used its immortal power to draw a circle with a 2,000 feet circumference. For this battle between the prince and the immortal Du sect's talent, both parties should not overdo it. The usage of killing Dharma treasures is not allowed. The boundary was drawn, and the rules were established. The battle suddenly became much more official. Changshou and Aoya looked at each other again. While standing 300 feet apart, their life force clashed again. Aoya stood rooted to the spot as some withered snowflakes appeared and floated around him. There was a flickering flame within each snowflake. "My aura must be strong and the defeat needs to be extremely tragic. Breath in and hold the breath." Aoya steadied himself once more and was about to charge forward. "Hold on!" Changshou hollered once more. Aoya's feet slipped and he hopped forward twice. This fellow would always shout, "Hold on," just as he was about to circulate his Dharma powers. Changshou said, "Your Highness, why don't we battle with our wits instead? So noisy." "Here I come," Aoya growled, ferociously charging forward. His body was like an arrow being fired as the ice flare around him shone brightly, leaving a mirage of him at the original spot. However, his front had a glaringly obvious flaw. Changshou tightly clutched a stack of talismans in his hand. In the very instant Aoya came dangerously close to him, he swayed, evading to the side in a shagged yet graceful fashion. The dragon swimming across clouds was a superior class movement technique that he had revealed to the immortal Du sect before. However, this was only a movement technique and not some formidable mystical ability. While brushing past Li Changshou, Aoye frowned as he stared at Li Changshu's panicked expression. Aoye silently thought, "What's going on? Is it so difficult to attack head-on? Perhaps I'm too ferocious and scared him away. Don't be afraid and hit me directly. I will make you win fabulously." After running for 200 feet more, Aoye suavely somersaulted in the air and stabilized his footing before charging at Li Changshu once again. Li Changshu took out 6 talismans and made some Dharma hand seals. The talisman patterns on the talismans shone, sprouting a number of fire snakes at the opponent. Aoye did not evade but lunged forward, the fire consuming his body. In the next moment, however, he dashed through the ordinary fire, ferocious and unstoppable. Li Changshu completed some abstruse footwork easier this time round, but he was still a little flustered. He evaded Aoye's attack once more and even threw 2 talismans at Aoye. Aoye sneered and immediately changed his attack method. He closely tailed after Li Changshu, but willingly charged straight into all talisman flames. Li Changshu executed the dragon swimming across clouds with the Dharma powers of a second stage void return cultivator. As he went into offense and defense, alternatively, he quickly fell into a disadvantageous position and fortunately managed to get to the spot he had chosen. In the blink of an eye, the two of them had exchanged more than 10 blows. Aoye's frown deepened. Making use of his superior strength, he continuously delivered flaws and his own face to his opponent to target. However, perhaps his opponent was purposely avoiding his vital parts and did not dare to attack a prince of the Dragon Palace, or the opponent's strength was truly too weak, and he could not grasp the opportunity offered to him on a platter. His opponent simply refused to make use of the flaws offered. Fortunately, although their talisman techniques were not strong, he had already suffered from numerous fire attacks. In just a moment, he could directly enact the scene of a live dragon exploding. Finally, Li Changshu and Aoye had the very first body contact. 30 feet behind Li Changshu was the boundary, having been forced to that position. His eyes gained a determined gaze. He threw out a dozen talismans, Dharma powers gathering at his palm and transforming into thunder streaks. Daybreak 5 Thunder Technique. This was considered a slightly advanced Dharma spell of the immortal Du sect. Most Void returned disciples had already mastered this technique. Thunder flashed and fire sparks burst. Aoye charged within the resulting cloud of thunder and fire. His fist finally smacked onto Li Changshu's palm. "Hey!" Aoye frowned. His innate sensitive battle instinct sensed danger the moment this clash happened. "Hey!" At the same time, Li Changshu was a little befuddled. This punch was thrown without any strength behind it. Even so, Li Changshu still followed with the script he curated. His body tilted backward as he staggered a few steps back. After using some hand movements to shift Aoye's fist to the side, Li Changshu continued to move backward. Aoye seized this opportunity as well and purposely slipped a little. Stumbling, he made some steps to the left as he mused. "This should be enough." At that very moment, Aoye heard a cough coming from the side. His sapphire eyes shifted to the side, and he looked from the corner of his eyes. Li Changshu lowered his head and coughed a few times, his fingertips covered with some blood. Then he looked towards the sky, let out a long sigh, and murmured with a despondent expression, "Forget it, I still lost. My capabilities are insufficient. I need to head back and cultivate more." He took half a step back, coincidentally crossing the previously drawn boundary. The various immortals, cultivators, and members of the dragon and ocean race on the Lotus platform looked on with pity. The movement techniques, talisman techniques, and thunder techniques Li Changshu just exhibited were quite impressive for a second stage void return disciple. He admitted defeat. Aoye was stunned for a moment. He looked down and saw the shimmering border in front of Li Changshu, unable to process it immediately. "Why in the world did you admit defeat? Why did you admit defeat first? Did you not wish to win? Aren't you a cultivator of the human race?" Then he heard the turtle minster at the side shout, "For this battle, the second prince." Aoye's eyes widened as his face contorted. "How can this be allowed? My perfect plan, the most important step of the plan to wake up the dragon race. How dare you admit defeat? I even volunteered to be hit. This. The second prince's face suddenly became flushed. The turtle minster's announcement was still at. "Is the... Ah!" Aoye tilted his head up suddenly and gave a deep roar. At the same time, pale gold dragon blood suddenly started sprouting from his surroundings, while even cracks appeared on his immortal armor. The heaven immortal turtle minister was frightened. Aoyi stared at Li Changshou and said with a trembling voice, "Such powerful talisman technique." As he spoke, his body started falling backward and landed on the blood pool. The surrounding dragon experts swarmed into the square. The whole venue descended into utter chaos. Li Changshou was rendered speechless. The acting skills of this little brother from the dragon race are impassable and at a newbie level. A few perfected immortals from the Immortal Du sect rushed from the sides, stood in front of Li Changshou, and protected him. The whole venue descended into chaos the moment Aoyi collapsed. Li Changshou sensed that quite a few increasingly hostile gazes from a number of Dragon Palace experts locked onto him. He had gained a rough understanding of the Dragon Palace's second prince's befuddling actions. Thus, he quickly started to think of a solution. That fellow's acting was very fake, but he was still a prince. It would not be good if the Dragon Palace made use of this opportunity to create trouble. Jiu stood in front of Li Changshou, using her petite body to block half of his. She asked in a low voice, "Are you injured, Martial Nephew Changshou?" "My aura is a little unstable, and that's all. Don't worry, Aunt Master. The punches of the second prince were quite powerful, after all. But I'm fine," Li Changshou replied in a low voice, having already come up with a solution for this situation at hand. With a worried and guilty expression, he sighed and lamented, "I wonder how the second prince's injuries are. My talisman techniques should not have been able to break through the immortal armor he was wearing. Could it be because I repeatedly used my movement technique to evade and lacked the courage to meet him head-on? And that is why, in his anxiety, his Dharma powers went haywire. Why don't you help to check his body, Aunt Master? After all, I don't know how advanced the Dragon Palace's medical skills are and if they could diagnose a sickness like this." Jiu laughed humorlessly and chided. "There are many experts in the Dragon Palace, so how can such a thing be impossible? Don't worry about it." Upon hearing that, the ministers of the Dragon Palace looked towards Aoyi. Shortly, the Turtle Minster, who was the first to reach Aoyi, shouted, "His Highness is all right. It is just that something went awry during the circulation of his Dharma powers, causing his Dharma powers to break through his body. His Highness has simply lost consciousness as a result. He will regain consciousness soon and is, in fact, fine." A Dragon Palace general wearing silver armor immediately inquired, "Then what do we do about this battle, Minister?" The Turtle Minister fell silent. It looked at the boundary and then glanced at the unconscious Aoyi. This time, Li Changshou did not need to worry about the situation. A male perfected immortal of the Immortal Du sect standing at the side smiled and replied, "The second prince is, of course, the winner. It was only after my martial nephew stepped out of the boundary that the second prince sustained inner injuries. The outcome is obvious. I have a chi-regulating pill, made using a secret pill formula from the Immortal Du sect. The Dragon Palace might not have much care for an ordinary pill like this, but it is a little token from the Immortal Du sect. Thank you." The Turtle Minister gestured for the Dragon Palace general to accept the pill. Thus, this matter closed. The Turtle Minister immediately called some immortal prawn soldiers over, placed the unconscious second Prince Aoyi on a jade chair, and directed the soldiers to carry it out. The Immortal Du sect's immortals cupped their fists and returned to the sect's spot while protecting Li Changshou among them. While walking, Li Changshou suddenly whispered to Jiu beside him, "Aunt Master, I have read on an ancient book that the type of grape on our table is very useful for when one's chi goes awry during cultivation. That grape was given by the Dragon Palace. Wouldn't they know it better than you?" Jiu reprimanded. "And you, why did you jump out of the boundary?" "You might have won if you simply stood there for a while longer," Li Changshou replied with a bitter smile. "I simply couldn't hold my own any longer." Jiu became unhappy and scolded Li Changshou. "When we return, I will personally make sure that you focus when you cultivate. If your cultivation level is so weak, what use is there to play around with alchemy and array formations? Your own cultivation level is the foundation of Tao. Otherwise, if you chance upon any formidable Dharma treasure, you will not be able to wield it at its full capability." Li Changshou lowered his head as he replied, relieved, "Yes, I know my mistake now. He could clearly sense that the gazes on him started to dissipate. Xianxia, who was carrying a huge sword, approached him and looked at him in concern. "Senior brother Changshou, how are your injuries?" It's nothing. "My aura is slightly unstable, that's all," answered Li Changshou, looking guilty. "My capability is insufficient, causing junior sister and the rest of the sect to worry and resulting in the sect to lose face." A senior brother instantly sent a voice transmission to him, evidently that Dragon Palace's second prince was purposely seeking trouble and intentionally chose you, junior brother Changshou. "Wait and see, junior brother. I will let the dragons participating later to know how powerful we can be." Li Changshou looked at that senior brother in gratitude. "Senior brother Changshou, you can return to your seat first and rest. There's no need for you to continue standing. The Dragon Palace is too much. That second prince is despicable," Jiu reminded. "Sit well and don't complain. There are so many heaven immortals watching from above." All disciples were reprimanded, but some of them continued to be indignant at the injustice Li Changshou faced. As a result, they were scolded by the other perfected immortals of the Immortal Du sect. The reaction of those people was actually expected. Li Changshou knew that this reaction was so big not because of him, but because of the collective pride as a sect. He returned to his seat, and his fluctuating aura swiftly calmed down. Xianxia looked back at him several times as she walked away from him. Then, the concern on her face disappeared, and her expression turned increasingly cold. The Immortal Du sect's #1 disciple's eyes started to burn furiously. She removed the large sword from her back and placed it down on the short table. After pointing a few places on the blade and removing the seal on it, numerous flame patterns appeared on the large sword. Then they slowly transformed into several long, thin flying swords. Suddenly, the temperature of the seating area where the young Immortal Du sect disciples gathered dropped. She took out 2 bottles of pills and checked them to make sure that there were sufficient pills to aid in recovering one's Dharma powers. Then, she took out a handkerchief and slowly wiped the set of flying swords. Her face was cold and expressionless, her eyes looking a little scary. "Junior sister Yaoqin." She heard Li Changshou's voice transmission, and Xianxia's movement stopped. At the same time, she turned around to look at him. "When it's your turn later, please exercise restraint. We're in the Dragon Palace, and we should not clash with them directly." Xianxia nodded her head slightly. Her murderous gaze softened and became gentler. In that instant, she might be puckering her lips or smiling, or perhaps both. However, her expression and gaze were indeed trying to tell Li Changshou not to worry. The 3 Immortal Du sect disciples separating Li Changshou and Xianxia saw that expression on the latter for the very first time. All of them were surprised, and were strangely also feeling like they were in the way, and very extra. Xianxia continued to meticulously wipe her flying swords. It seemed like she did not change her mind simply because of Li Changshou's voice transmission. Li Changshou did not continue to bother himself with it, since there was nothing he could do either. He cast the wind speech incantation, this time for the purpose of listening in to the discussion and gossip happening in the venue. This way, he would obtain some real-life feedback after his performance. Soon, voices entered his ear with the wind flow, from near and far away in a crescendo. "That Immortal Du sect disciple is not bad. That Dragon Palace's second prince was too impatient and failed to use his full strength. Didn't that turtle minister say so? After all, the second prince is only 10 years old. It is normal for him to be slightly hot-blooded. I myself might not win against the second prince. It is a pity that the Immortal Du sect disciple went out of the boundary first." After carefully analyzing for a while, Li Changshou felt assured. His image as an excellent disciple of the Immortal Du sect was believable and without any flaws. As he was sitting with the top 10 immortal seedlings of the sect, he would soon be compared and forgotten since the outsiders would not see anything noteworthy about him. The turtle minister officially announced the result once more. The Dragon Palace's second prince won the round. However, due to his impatience, the second prince's aura had gone awry, causing him to sustain internal injuries. He had already returned to the Dragon Palace to recuperate. The celebratory segments after would hence be cancelled. This small incident temporarily ended. From that incident, Li Changshou witnessed firsthand the unpredictability of the primordial world and the complexity of the dragon's heart. Li Changshou felt that he was still too young, having underestimated the human heart and dragon nature. thus failing to consider the matter completely. But how could he know that that little dragon would pull such a trick? Aoyu was actually so unruly that he attempted to intentionally lose to him. Fortunately, Li Changshou had stepped out of the boundary and admitted defeat first. Otherwise, the whole situation might be worse than it was now. Next time, if he encountered a similar situation, Li Changshou would punch himself in the face to cause severe injuries so that he could directly exit the battle. Li Changshou recalled the battle scene, which appeared peaceful on the surface but was actually quite bizarre. The instant the fist and the palm clashed, two pitch-black figures seemed to appear behind the human and the dragon, looking coldly at each other's eyes. "You dare to deceive me? Back at you, my friend." The little dragon most likely had other plans as well. Li Changshou's biggest hope right now was to be able to return to the sect safely. After balancing the pros and cons, it would be worthwhile to leave this dangerous environment successfully, even if he needed to expose some of his trump cards. After all, the reason he concealed trump cards was so that he would be able to live well. Who knew what kind of tricks there were up the dragon's sleeves? The demon sweeping meet officially started after a performance. The Dragon Palace took out 12 immortal Dharma treasures to serve as the final prize of the battles between disciples happening later on. Battles happened as the participants played offensive and defensive. Countless disciples entered the segment. The venue was split into several areas as well. Each round had an immortal treasure as the prize. If someone could successfully defend the place 9 consecutive times and defeat the warrior the Dragon Palace sent out, they could take the immortal treasure away. The warriors were some young dragons, with the strength equivalent to that of an average first or second stage Dao requital cultivator. The difficulty of defending the treasure was not low. However, the disciples from the various immortal sects were very excited since it was hard for them to obtain immortal treasures. The moment the battle started, the numerous disciples exhibited their techniques. The whole scene was very spectacular. However, 2 hours passed, and only an early-stage Dao requital disciple from a major sect won 9 consecutive rounds, obtaining the opportunity to meet the warrior head-on. Nonetheless, the battle ended with the cultivator losing. At that moment, Xianxia slapped on the short table and flew on the sky with 12 transparent flying swords encircling her. Then, she landed before the dragon youngster. One battle. Today, Xianxia from the Immortal Du sect shocked everyone present at the Dragon Palace. She controlled the swords and fire, seizing 4 immortal treasures, defeating several dozens of cultivators, and injuring 4 Dao requital youngsters from the dragon race in total. Her reputation rose in the East Continent. The female cultivator certainly would have an extraordinary future ahead, and after that drawn-out battle, she became the focal point of all gazes. She dragged her exhausted body, covered with injuries, and was carrying a large sword on her back, taking slow steps towards the Immortal Du sect's seating area. She rejected the offers of help from the rest of the members from the sect and ignored the Uncle Master's advice that she should rest immediately. After bypassing her seat, she continued on slightly. Her head was lowered, body hunched, and slender hands were slightly trembling due to overexerting her Dharma powers. However, she succeeded in placing the 4 immortal treasures emitting rainbow lights onto the short table in front of the Immortal Du sect's second stay, void returned disciple, someone that most people had already forgotten about. Then, she smiled tiredly at the male disciple who was looking at her. At that moment, all cultivators present gained profound respect for Xianxia. The perfected immortals from the various immortal sects were impressed as well. Li Changshou looked back at her with a conflicted gaze, having been rendered speechless. He stood up with the intention to hold her up, but Xianxia thought of his injuries and immediately evaded his hands. Hence, Li Changshou could only give a Dao salute at Xianxia's back while silently blessing Uncle Master Jiu Wu. A few hundred times, inside an extravagant underwater palace hall, the youngster lying on the 1,000 feet long bed suddenly opened his eyes. He reached back and grabbed hold of the maidservant who was kneeling beside him and was currently peeling grapes for him. Did I lose? Did I lose? Don't worry, Your Highness, you won. What? How's that possible? I evidently. Second prince, second prince. The prince fainted once again. White clouds floated above the azure ocean. Just like when they had been on the journey to the East Ocean, a huge white cloud floated towards the northwest gate while carrying 16 perfected immortals and 11 disciples. and a few heaven immortals protecting the order in all 4 directions above. Those who left first dumped the huge white clouds behind. The cloud path was very wide and did not seem crowded. This was the 3rd day after Li Changshu's insane battle with Ao Yi, and the demon-sweeping meet had also ended successfully. The fake leader, Li Changshu, sat at the corner and had retired from glory. Thus, nobody paid attention to him. Since the true leader, Xianxia, had an outstanding performance at the meet, her name had spread everywhere. She had beaten 36 cultivators and 4 dragon race disciples consecutively. As a result, she had risen to fame. She was now being surrounded in the middle of the white cloud. Among Xianxia's opponents on that day, and those 4 dragon race disciples, 7 to 8 of them were at the first stage or second stage of the Tao Requital realm. On the other hand, given her cultivation at the 8th stage of the Void Return realm, she had relied on her firm mind and clever techniques accumulated with hard work. Furthermore, the power and grade of her flying sword surpassed that of an ordinary immortal treasure. It had experienced many fierce battles and gnawed those bones in succession. The power supporting her perseverance was not the 4 immortal treasures that the Dragon Palace had used. Under everyone's gaze, she put those 4 immortal treasures before her senior brother, who had previously been bullied and humiliated by the dragon race. Then, she returned to her own seat and meditated cross-legged, which was akin to giving everyone a clear answer. She was not contending for the Dharma treasures, but striving for determination. I, a disciple of the immortal Du sect, am not easily dealt with by other people. The senior brother from my sect is not what anybody can bully either. At that time, the eyes of a few sentimental martial ants had gone red. If Li Changshu had not been the one being implicated, he would definitely have given Xianxia a thumbs up and told her that she had been cool. However, he had been bullied by the dragon race. After being protected by his junior sister, he was a lucky one who had obtained 4 immortal treasures for no reason. That was relatively awkward. These 4 immortal treasures were like 4 hot potatoes. Fortunately, Li Changshu reacted in time and entrusted them to Martial Ant Jiu, who was in the line of succession in the heaven-breaking peak, for safekeeping. When they returned to the mountains, they would be given to Xianxia's master, Martial Uncle Jiang Jingshan. This was proper handling that would not cause any more unnecessary trouble. However, the feeling of being protected and receiving help to stand up for himself was slightly strange. Li Changshu had gained some benefits on the journey to the East Ocean. In the next 2 days, competitions between cultivators of the same seniority helped him broaden his combat methods. These cultivators came from different immortal sects and had different main cultivation techniques. Although the 5-element yin-yang Dao technique was their main one, it had many different kinds of styles and complicated combinations. Li Changshu had been watching at the side for 2 days. He had learned some very useful little tricks, which supplemented the tactical setups for the paper dolls. Broadening his horizons and raising his experiences were also a kind of cultivation. Due to Xianxia's blow, the immortal Du sect had been the biggest winner for the meet this time. Not only had they taken away 1/3 of the Dharma treasures, but they had also boosted their sect's reputation by a lot. During the next ceremony to take in disciples, they might even be able to recruit a few immortal seedlings because of this. After Xianxia left, although disciples of the same seniority as her, such as Li Changshu, had to enter the battle as well, their best record was only 7 consecutive wins. The senior brother, who had said he wanted to stand up for him, had won 3 out of 4 battles and had not been able to meet the remaining young dragons. Just when she left the range of the East Ocean, Jiu returned to being an obedient fairy and suddenly heard a voice transmission from above. She hurriedly flew into the sky on the cloud to the side of her master, exalted Wang Qing. Soon, Jiu flew down from the sky and was full of smiles. She landed back on the white cloud, where most of the teams were, and took out a pill bottle before putting it beside Xianxia. Previously, Xianxia had spent a lot of effort. Ever since the huge battle 2 days ago, she had been mediating and cultivating. Then, Jiu walked to Li Changshu and sized him up as she cranked her head before she muttered, "That's strange. How come Master has praised you more than Xianxia?" Li Changshu had to worry about that. Had exalted Wang Qing seen through his true cultivation level? No, that was not right. If that was the case, he should have reproached him for not winning the glory for their sect. He should not have been praising him for no reason instead. Here, this is for you. This is a reward from my master. This is not considered a reward within the sect. Jiu threw out a jade token before she sat cross-legged 3 feet from Li Changshou. A few disciples perked their ears to hear what was happening. Xianxia had received the pill rewarded by exalted Wang Qing, which was nothing. However, Li Changshou had lost his only battle. How could he receive a reward? In that jade token, there should be some kind of high-level immortal techniques, right? After all, it was the reward that exalted Wang Qing had personally given. Jiu grinned, pretended to be stern, cleared her throat, and said, "Master said that you have dealt with the Prince of the Dragon Palace well. The second Prince of the Dragon Palace is full of evil tricks. He should have wanted to let you beat him up with serious injuries and lose to you on purpose. Then, the Dragon Palace would seize the chance to take action on the immortal Du sect. Master said that if you had not seen through him in time, used the deceptive technique, and admitted defeat first, we might not be able to return to the mountains. He also said that fifth senior brother had mentioned you a few times before him, saying that you are meticulous in your thoughts, prudent in your execution, and very reliable in handling matters. He had not chosen the wrong person to lead the team of disciples this time." The burden in Li Changshou's heart fell instantly. Exalted Wang Qing had actually seen through the conspiracy of the Dragon Palace. Indeed, he had the height and outlook of a heaven immortal, which was totally different from their insignificant outlook. Although Li Changshou had previously done a meticulous analysis, deduced that the Prince of the Dragon Palace wanted to dishonor the Dragon Palace and reverse the bad atmosphere of the Dragon Palace, he had not expected such logic behind that, and even such a vicious scheme. Li Changshou thought back right away and realized that he was not standing at a height high enough. From the start, due to his first impression, he had believed that the Dragon Palace did not dare to deal with the immortal sects of the 3 schools directly. At the very most, they would let Aoye kill an insignificant disciple like him in the competition. Oh, after thinking about it carefully, exalted Wang Qing's logic seems to have many loopholes. Forget it, forget it. From the present outcome, exalted Wang Qing's analysis is beneficial to me. This exalted one was very great. Very warm, very considerate. A few of the disciples suddenly saw the light and were enlightened, while a few perfected immortals appeared to have known it before. Most of them looked at Li Changshou in admiration. For no reason, he had received a surge of favorable impressions from the others. This was much better than having bad impressions. Li Changshou supposed that he would receive rich rewards after he returned to the mountain, even though he had received the Inaction Sutra in advance. Li Changshou looked down at the jade token and realized that there was a profound thunder spell engraved on it, true Heaven Yang Thunder mantra. After pondering slightly, Li Changshou sent a voice transmission to Jiu at his side and handed the jade token over to her. Jiu looked at Li Changshou in shock. She had been cultivating for nearly 1,000 years, but she had never heard of something so absurd. The elder in the sect had bestowed a treasure, while the junior still wanted to be picky and wanted her to ask whether this thunder spell could be changed into the true Samadhi Flame's cultivation technique, which was more useful to alchemy. Li Changshou naturally knew it was inappropriate for him to be doing this. However, Jiu was on good terms with her master, and he indeed wanted the true Samadhi Flames more than anything. If he could obtain the true Samadhi Flames, his strength would soar greatly. Therefore, he could only be thick-skinned. "I'm going to get scolded by master." Jiu rolled her eyes and took the jade token. She flew into the sky in a huff but restored her obedient look halfway. Very soon, Jiu turned back without a hitch and used a handkerchief to wrap 2 jade tokens. While nobody was noticing, she threw it to Li Changshou. Exalted Wang Qing did not take back the true Heaven Yang Thunder mantra. The Dharma spell engraved on the new jade token was of a similar grade to the thunder spell. It was written with 3 big words, true Samadhi Flames. After carefully reading a few sentences of the opening, he heard the cultivation outline of Essence Flame, Spirit Flame, and Chi Flame. He felt a sense of satisfaction. He had finally obtained it. It was seriously real. Perhaps this matter might leave an impression on exalted Wang Qing that he was greedy and discontented. However, everything was worth it. After Li Changshou returned to the mountain, he would take root and cultivate honestly at the little Qiang Peak. He would pay no attention to external matters and study the True Flame Sutra wholeheartedly. The true Samadhi Flames were not only used to injure his enemies. It was a wider type of true flame handed down by the Tao sect. It was famous for its great power and a lower threshold for cultivation. However, it was not easy for him to obtain the cultivation technique of the true samadhi flames. When Li Changshou had initial success with the true samadhi flames, he could record the techniques in an ancient text and use the true samadhi flames to enhance his soul and Tao body. That way, he would be more confident when he faced the heavenly tribulation. From today onward, he only needed to go out of the mountain once more, survive the heavenly tribulation. If he could successfully go through the heavenly tribulation, he could keep a low profile and seek longevity in the mountains in the future. He dreamt about being able to feed fish, grow flowers, refine pills, and set up array formations. When he was bored, Li Changshou could tease his junior sisters. When he had nothing to do, he could be a backup civil servant of the heavenly courts. This was probably the life he yearned for the most at present. Would trouble descend from the sky? Li Changshou looked at Xianxia, who was being protected tightly and could not help but reveal a slight smile. After junior sister Xianxia returned to the mountains, she should be able to be valued by the sect the most. From a certain degree, it would also become the shackles that restricted her movement. As long as Li Changshou dealt with martial uncle Jiu Wu, later on, there would be no way for trouble. The little Qiang Peak would also definitely restore to its usual peace. As for martial Aunt Jiu, it was a good thing even if she came over often. That way, after immortal ascension, Li Changshou would produce some special pills and set up some formidable array formations, which would all be thanks to her help. "What are you thinking?" Jiu sent a voice transmission at the side before she curled her lips. "I know you're uneasy at a glance." Li Changshou replied with a smile. "Can you solve the Rubik's Cube?" Jiu smiled in satisfaction. She threw the Rubik's Cube with 6 colors on each side back and answered indifferently, "It's pretty easy since I found a way. Give me something else fun." Li Changshou smiled and nodded his head. He took out a 5x5 Rubik's Cube and handed it to her. Jiu looked at the dazzling cube and its color. Shocked, she quickly sat in meditation and cultivated seriously. Deep in the East Ocean, the prawn soldiers, crab generals, and flood dragon troops heavily guarded the crystal palace at the bottom of the ocean that was covered by array formations. The singing and dancing in the main hall did not cease, and the feast to celebrate the demon-sweeping meat had ended smoothly. The experts in the Dragon Palace watched comfortably as the most outstanding young disciples from the immortal sect in the East Continent took out all sorts of Dharma treasures for the battle. The Dragon King seemed to be drunk on the throne carved by crystal corals, leaning on the soft cushion made by the brilliant 9-winged gold silkworms, which would be changed monthly, with a few beautiful young ladies at the side. These ladies gently fanned the Dragon King and massaged his shoulders, back, and dragon legs. Being born as a dragon was that boring, cozy, and dull. The civil and military chancellors of the Dragon Palace drank toast after toast while they talked cheerfully about the battles of those human disciples they had seen. Outside the main hall, the young dragon, which had just woken up for half a day, ascended the steps with a firm gaze. He was the second prince of the East Ocean, Aoyi. He was going to do something big. "Is this place truly the little Qiang Peak that I'm familiar with?" On a trapping array formation in the periphery of the pill chamber, the new immortal of the Immortal Du sect, Taoist priest Qi Yuan, was wearing a messy Taoist robe and had a flustered gaze. He was looking at the 3 small paths in front of him while feeling at a loss and helpless. A few days later, he still could not walk out of it. He had actually spent many years studying the array formation. However, he had limited skills in the array formation. After all, in the past hundreds of years, Qi Yuan had spent most of his time mending his Tao base. To study the array formation method, he had also taken the array diagrams, set them up several times, and remembered how to set them up, which was considered having initial success in enlightenment. Therefore, when he faced the trapping chain array formations, "Which expert set this up at the little Qiang Peak? What plans does he have?" Qi Yuan mumbled in a low voice and tried to recall his previous itinerary. While Qi Yuan was in a daze, and at a loss, he found another new path. The forest up ahead was verdant. There were no misleading white mists, and the scenery was very ordinary. Qi Yuan cautiously moved forward and very soon found something new. There was a wooden sign hung on the treetop up ahead with 3 words written. "Are you lost?" Qi Yuan subconsciously nodded his head before he then trembled and became vigilant. Why did the handwriting seem so familiar? Qi Yuan stared at the wooden sign for a while and saw another wooden sign hung on the tree behind. He took 2 steps forward and there were some changes in his surrounding scenery. However, the wooden sign behind was still there. On the wooden sign it was written, "What brings you here to the Little Qiang Peak, sir?" "I live here," Qi Yuan berated furiously, but his hands kept trembling. Could it be? Could it be that this was the passage of time as in the legends? In ancient legends, a connate person had entered a canyon. After he had walked out from the other side of the canyon tens of thousands of years later, he had not felt that he had aged. Could it be that such an absurd thing also happened to him? Had the current Little Qiang Peak no longer been the Little Qiang Peak when he was still around? Had it been the Little Qiang Peak thousands or hundreds of years later? Upon seeing that there was still a wooden sign behind, Qi Yuan once again went towards it. When he stood before the wooden sign, the surrounding scenery changed again as though it was teleportation. The array formations were changing. Behind the wooden sign was another wooden sign. Qi Yuan found the handwritings on those wooden signs increasingly familiar. It was as if there was a shadow following him and kept faintly asking him questions beside his ears. It was driving him to a certain trap, but he actually did not dare to retreat. "Are you someone from the Immortal Du sect, sir? This array formation is to protect an important place like the Pill Chamber, and it is in accordance with the sect rules." Pill Chamber. He seemed to have heard it from his disciple. "Did you enter the Little Qiang Peak without permission, sir? Do I still need to barge? I am the peak leader of Little Qiang Peak. Please do not destroy the grasses and trees here. This path leads to an open space without sound isolation array formations." Huh, this was an exit left by the person who had set up the array formation. "This is an improvised guide sign. The open space is up ahead. You have reached. Please take 3 steps forward." Qi Yuan stopped in his tracks and subconsciously held his breath. He looked at the huge tree in front and took 3 steps forward doubtfully. The scenery before his eyes changed again. An open space surrounded by overgrowth appeared before his eyes. There were stacks of fallen leaves on the ground and a small table with a bucket of spiritual spring water at the side. What? What is this place? Qi Yuan saw another wooden sign up ahead and walked over. He found the handwriting on the wooden sign very familiar, and yet he could recall where he had seen it. "Sir, please wait here. If I can't rush over in time, I should be in seclusion or at a crucial period in alchemy. If you are unable to wait, you can use your immortal powers to call someone over to save you. The Little Qiang Peak sincerely welcomes your arrival, but do visit directly next time. Do not go near the Pill Chamber. Little Qiang Peak's peak leader, Qi Yuan, pays respect here." Qi Yuan's hands trembled, and he took 2 steps back before hitting onto a tree. His retreat had unconsciously been blocked. Was this set up by myself? Qi Yuan's eyes widened as if he had seen a ghost, and his drunkenness had been obliterated instantly. He scanned the whole area and could only slightly sense his head spinning. Could it be that that person had been possessed? No, that was not right. Could it be because a turbid immortal was impure? When he had been drinking just now, a senior from the sect had reminded him that turbid immortals were easily contaminated by the earth qi, and their Tao heart would easily meet evil spirits. Could it be? Could it be that I'm just a mental demon in the true Qi Yuan? Qi Yuan's hands could not help but start trembling. He rushed to the wooden sign again to look at the handwriting on it. Then he was in disbelief. Wasn't the handwriting on this wooden sign his own handwriting? Qi Yuan slipped and landed on his butt on the ground, which was full of fallen leaves. He looked stunned with a flustered gaze, and his long, messy grayish-white hair looked even worse. Passage of time, turbid immortal, mental demon. Passage of time, turbid immortal, mental demon. Who am I? Could it be that I'm actually my mental demon? No, that is impossible. I'm not a mental demon, but Qi Yuan. I am Qi Yuan. Qi Yuan is me. I have stepped into the passage of time, so I cannot be a mental demon. No, that is not right. No, no, no. Qi Yuan put his hand on his head and suddenly raised his head before screaming loudly, which shocked the birds in the distance of the Little Qiang Peak. It had also occasionally made the few figures who were passing by in the sky to look at the forest of the Little Qiang Peak curiously. All of a sudden, a startled female voice was heard. "Master!" Qi Yuan stopped shouting and asked in a tremble, "Ling, Master, are you trapped in the array formation? Are you really Ling?" "Yes, Master." "How can I be fake?" "No, no, you can be a mental demon. My mental demon." Outside the array formation, Lan Ling, who had rushed over, could not help but cup her forehead. She was done for. Her master had been ruined by her senior brother. She groaned in a low voice and had an idea. She quickly said, "Don't move. There are a lot of array formations here. Don't move toward Ling's voice either. If you leave that small area, you cannot hear anything from the outside. I will go in to find you. However, I need to spend some time to find the array formation path to your location. Only senior brother can undo this array formation. This place is set up by him. Master, wait patiently for a while." Qi Yuan froze slightly. Very soon he heard an ayah from outside. Just now, what had his disciple said? "Senior brother, this place had been set up by Changshou." Qi Yuan was full of doubts. Since he was lost in thoughts, he gradually calmed down. After 1 hour, Lan Ling, who had fallen leaves on her and a badly battered face, appeared before her master with a bitter smile. She then did a Dao salute to him. "Master, I have found you." Qi Yuan could not help but stare at Lan Ling. While being unperturbed, she executed a few Dharma spells, which were all taught by Qi Yuan. "Master, I'm really Ling." Qi Yuan was relieved and replied with a bitter smile. "What exactly is going on?" "Okay." Ling bit her lips and muttered to herself. She was thinking about how she was going to help her senior brother. Soon, she took out a storage sack and walked to the side of the short table. She then took out 2 cushions and teapots and said with a smile, "Master, have a rest here first. Let me slowly report to you." Qi Yuan was still looking very doubtful. However, when he sat on the cushion and saw Lan Ling's familiar skill of brewing tea, many of his doubts had vanished. The forest was extremely quiet, and only the rustling of the breeze on the treetops could be heard. Since the surrounding trees had been covered, the azure sky seemed to be only left with this small area. In a flash, this old Taoist priest understood what was going on. He sized up the place and asked in a low voice, "This place was set up by your senior brother?" Lan Ling answered, "It should be said that he had designed this place, while the perfected immortal of the heaven-breaking peak, Martial Aunt Juju, set this up." "Oh, no wonder," Qi Yuan answered with a bitter smile. "So junior sister Juju helped with it." "Actually, Martial Aunt Juju is not proficient in array formations. Senior brother was the one telling her to put this here and put that there." Lan Ling paused and lowered her head before she said, "Master, have you never realized that?" Qi Yuan held up his teacup and sipped a mouthful of tea. It was indeed his favorite chrysanthemum lotus seed tea. "Realize what? That you like your senior brother." "Oh God!" Lan Ling instantly blushed. Qi Yuan frowned and fixed his eyes on her. "Don't you like Changshou?" "I can't tell you this directly, I will feel shy." Lan Ling soon calmed down and said softly, "Senior brother is actually not ordinary." "Oh." Qi Yuan looked at her with a pampering look and said with a smile, "In your eyes, your senior brother is naturally not ordinary." "That's not it, master." Lan Ling lifted her hand to tidy up the strand of hair at the side of her ear. "Senior brother is actually much more competent than you think he is. For example, he had used these basic array formations to set up a chain array here. Although he allowed Martial Aunt Juju to help him, there would be no difference even if he set up this place alone." Qi Yuan froze at once. Lan Ling added, "For more than 10 years after I joined the sect, senior brother has taught me a lot of things. Many instances, I would be confused after you talked about the Tao. Senior brother would always come over to explain the quintessence to me. Often, he could point out the true meaning in 1 or 2 sentences. Therefore, I am at such a cultivation level." Qi Yuan frowned and looked at her, not knowing what to say at the moment. Lan Ling said gently, "Look, master, what stage is my cultivation currently at?" Qi Yuan stroked his beard and mumbled before answering, "9th stage of the Qi refinement realm." Lan Ling picked up the sword with both hands and performed a complex seal. Her surrounding aura suddenly rushed outward. "What about now?" Qi Yuan widened his eyes. "5th stage of the soul formation realm. Lan Ling, when did you?" Lan Ling made a silent gesture and once again performed a seal with both hands. Her surrounding aura was rapidly restrained. She said in a low voice, "This is the Qi-calming turtle breathing mantra that senior brother has imparted to me. It can hide my cultivation level as long as I don't come into contact with any perfected immortals. I can also reveal whatever cultivation realm I want." There was only shock on Qi Yuan's face. "Master, senior brother has entered the sect for 100 years. You spent most of your time in seclusion to break through to the immortal realm. Your understanding and concern towards him are simply too insufficient." While Lan Ling supported the teacup base with her left hand, her right hand took the teacup, and she gently sipped a mouthful of tea. She no longer looked doubtful. While senior brother has been taken to the East Ocean by Marshal Uncle Ju Wu, I want to let you know about these clearly. I've always been watching him at the side do many things for you, but you don't know anything about it. Every time you meet him, it's either you scold him or say how bad he is. Master, senior brother is probably not far from immortal ascension. If my guess is right, the immortal melting pill that you used was also refined from the immortal emancipating herbs that senior brother had dug up after going to the priming meet a few years ago. Master, you were worried about immortal ascension. Senior brother was also most concerned about your heavenly tribulation and had put in a lot of effort for that. What you only saw was a Faraday cage. Actually, senior brother has created more than 10 treasures to resist against the heavenly tribulation in the past 2 years. However, they were ineffective in the follow-up tests. I've seen him being vexed a few times. He squatted in front of the treasure that had been struck by the thunder tribulation. The only time I saw him got nervous was the moment you went through tribulation transcendence. Lan Ling looked at Qi Yuan. The latter was at a loss as he sat there. Master, senior brother is really not ordinary. I'm not just spouting nonsense. Slowly, Lan Ling talked about what she knew about her senior brother. Although she had concealed a lot of things that he had told her, she had not exaggerated anything. Qi Yuan gradually came back to his senses. When she asked Lan Ling to execute another Qi-calming turtle breathing mantra, he saw that she had a lot of immortal pills and poisonous pills. As a result, he sat there and immersed himself in thoughts. A moment later, Qi Yuan asked while feeling uneasy, Ling, tell me what I should do. Should I reward your senior brother when he returns? Master, you'd better take it as if I didn't say anything today and pretend nothing happened. Treat him as you usually do, Lan Ling replied with a smile. When he comes in to receive us in a moment, whack his butt with the horsetail whisk. But don't use all your strength. Every time you want to beat him, he actually deliberately exposed his flaws for you to catch him on purpose. Qi Yuan was shocked and said with a bitter smile, Am I that horrible? Lan Ling quickly shouted. Master, you are wise and heroic. Your immortal techniques are endless. Qi Yuan hesitated to reply. Then I will pretend that I didn't hear anything. What senior brother wants the most is for people to not notice him. Afterward, he would have amassed wealth while keeping a low profile. Lan Ling pouted. I need to pretend to be more stupid in front of him. I will pretend to be muddled when I need to. Otherwise, he will definitely drift apart from me. Lan Ling then started to criticize how Li Changshou usually bullied her, trying to relieve the sadness in her master's heart. Very soon, Qi Yuan was full of smiles thanks to her and was energetic again. You! Ha ha ha! Qi Yuan got up and walked to the side. He looked at the array formations set up at this place, which he did not understand, without allowing his disciple to see the tears at the side of his eyes. As his master, I've been too selfish. I've only thought about tribulation, transcendence, and seclusion. After I took in your senior brother and imparted cultivation techniques to him, I've always been in seclusion. I thought that after going through the heavenly tribulation this time, I would teach both of you to cultivate well. However, I realized that I've always been the one getting all the attention. Forget it. I don't care. I won't care anymore. With such a disciple, I can comfortably tell all the ancestors of the little Qiang Peak. Qi Yuan then turned to look at Lan Ling and said with a smile, My little disciple is also now so intelligent. Lan Ling laughed embarrassingly and mumbled softly, I've always been working hard so that I can be a match for senior brother. Oh, have tea, master. The tea is getting cold. Don't reveal anything I've told you today. All right. We will both pretend to be stupid and put on an act before your senior brother. After Qi Yuan sat back at the short table, he took out the horsetail whisk. I will teach him a lesson later on. Join me and see what it feels like. Lan Ling's eyes lit up. Can I, master? Of course. After deceiving me for so many years, I have to teach him a proper lesson. Lan Ling cheered excitedly and was eager to give it a try. Qi Yuan said, Don't worry. I will later enter seclusion to be enlightened on the cultivation technique of a turbid immortal. From today onward, the little Qiang Peak is all for the both of you. He then looked at the tea before him. As he looked at his reflection, he could not help but shake his head and smile lightly. Seriously, it was wonderful. On the way back to the immortal Du sect, Li Changshou thought, after coming out for a few days, it should be fine in the mountains, right? His master should still be drinking tea at the other peaks. He had also told his little junior sister to enter seclusion and cultivate. The most probable inconvenient situation was that someone would go to the little Qiang Peak and trespass the array formation around the pill chamber by accident. Even though the trapping arrays and mazes did not cause direct damage, if anyone stopped in between them for a long time, they would easily lose their mind and nourish the mental demons. However, after he had nearly driven Marshal Uncle Jiu Wu crazy the other time, Li Changshou had also done some changes to the chain arrays. He had left behind a guessed path. If a thief trespassed the array formation, he would drive them crazy and just silence them. However, there was a mountain-protecting array formation in the immortal sect. How could thieves enter? Under normal circumstances, the person who entered the array formation should be those from the same sect as him and had strange goals. Killing and driving them crazy was not appropriate. Hence, Li Changshou had set up some guide signs on the dead-end path to draw the trespasser into a comfortable environment to temporarily stabilize the person. This way, he could avoid being awkward afterward and not let the other party run everywhere. He could still set up other things with ample time. Moreover, if he managed to trap a perfected immortal who constantly made a move everywhere, it would likely trigger the hidden killing arrays. It was none of his business whether the trespasser died or got injured. At that time, it would be troublesome when the sect found out that he had gone against the rules. The role of the array formation was to stop other people from approaching the pill chamber on the surface. The guest room, set up in the array formation, could solve these two more critical problems properly. This was a necessary measure taken by Li Changshou after careful deliberations. Moreover, he had also used his master's name and imitated his handwriting on the wooden guide signs. After all, his master was the peak leader, while he was just an older disciple of the little Qiang peak. I'm finally going to return. Li Changshou scanned the mountains in the distance and planned his journey. After he returned, he would continue to suppress his cultivation level and ponder through the true samadhi flames. In this current minor realm, if Li Changshou wanted to suppress his natural speed of breaking through with his life, he should still be able to suppress it for another 2 years or so. 2 years was only enough for him to barely cultivate his true samadhi flames into the initial stage. The next time he went out of the mountains would be for the official tribulation transcendence. Then again, how should he explain to his master about the pill chamber and the chain arrays around it? If his master asked how he had set up the chain arrays, should he reveal some of his hidden strength? Li Changshou naturally trusted his master, but if his master spoke the truth after being drunk, forget it. His master and junior sister were the closest people to him. Their scope of power and treatment here should be unbiased. Li Changshou would go back and find his master to talk about it so that his master would understand him to the extent at which his junior sister understood him. As he approached the sect mountain, the night breeze was unexpectedly somewhat warm. When Li Changshou returned to the immortal Dew sect, it was already in the middle of the night, where the moon was bright and the stars were sparse. Everyone dispersed in front of the Bai Fan Hall, and Li Changshou also bade his leave to Marshal Aunt Jiu Jiu before drifting toward the little Qiang peak on the white cloud. Xianxia clearly wanted to say a few words to Li Changshou. However, just when she landed on the ground, she was told to go to the Bai Fan Hall by a few martial uncles. She had no chance to get away. Li Changshou drifted away on the white cloud without anyone noticing him. People were happy with their happy events, and he had reaped great benefits in the past few days. However, Li Changshou's expression nearly sank when he recalled his journey to the East Ocean. He still was not sure why the Dragon Prince had chosen him that day. Just in case he once again met the unconventional Aoyi, Li Changshou had to stay away from these ancient nobles in the future. The little Qiang peak was extremely quiet. From afar, Li Changshou realized that his little junior sister and master were not in their own respective straw huts. He scanned the array formations with his spiritual sense and saw them being trapped at the edge of the array formation. How had they ended up being trapped together inside? His master had always been in seclusion, so he did not know about the array formations at the back. On the other hand, Lan Ling was watching when he had set up the array formations. How had they gone in together? Could they have thought that the scenery there was good, so both of them had gone in together to have tea and enjoy the stars? Li Changshou drifted over on the white cloud. He was not in a hurry to let the two of them out. He would first check the array formation inside out. Just now, he had felt that the jade token used to control the array formations was left outside the trapping arrays. The breeze blew, and the white mists in the forest came and disappeared. The dense forest seemed to have less thicket. Lan Ling immediately cheered. "Master, senior brother is back." Qi Yuan perked up and wanted to get up. However, he seemed to have recalled something. He sat properly, showed his usual face, and picked up the specks of dust. "Cough, you brat! How great, Li Changshou! Aren't you coming over to receive your punishment?" Li Changshou, who was drifting over in the sky, blinked and sensed that something was unusual. As soon as he landed on the ground, his master whipped him with the horsetail whisk. After he had advanced to a turbid immortal, Qi Yuan's strength had soared. This horsetail whisk had whipped out a sky of white nets in a blink of an eye. If not for Li Changshou's endurance, he would have escaped. Li Changshou had been tied under the white net. Lan Ling at the side immediately pounced on her prey like a tiger and pushed Li Changshou down. A few sounds of miserable howling and peals of laughter were heard in the forest. However, the lesson that they were going to teach Lan Ling's senior brother was not that intense as she had expected. Thanks to her senior brother, who did not retaliate at all, and her master, who had been watching from the start, she did not know where to start. She was just a little junior sister. If her master did not demonstrate it, she could not hit her senior brother for real. She lifted her head to see her senior brother looking at her with a warning gaze. HMPH. As her heart raced, she was about to land her empty hands down fiercely. However, just when she was about to do that, her delicate hands could only eventually land on where her master had hit her senior brother several times. When she thought about how he had been beaten swollen by her master there, she could not help but gently rub it. Ling has indeed grown up." Li Changshou was relieved yet helpless. He educated her earnestly. "A woman has to restrain herself. Drooling and habits are different matters. It's not that I can't understand you. After all, you are at that age. However, as a cultivator, you still have to restrain the urge. What if you give rise to the mental demons, am I right?" "No, Lan Ling instantly blushed and looked at her master with a flustered look. She realized that her master was also looking at her with a frown. He wanted to say something but hesitated and looked awkward. "Just now I was just, stupid senior brother. You're bullying me. A gentleman takes action instead of reasoning things. Why are you so fierce? HMPH, I can't win over you. Master, if you don't take good care of her, how will she get married in the future? It's none of your business. I will die at the little Qiang peak of old age." Qi Yuan had already turned to leave. He had a slight smile on his face and slowly drifted toward his straw hut. After some time, Li Changshou walked out of the forest with a head full of leaves and untidy clothes. As he looked at the few bite marks on his arm, he was caught between laughter and tears. His junior sister was born in the year of the rabbit. This was proven. Lan Ling, who was behind him, blushed and pretended to look at the sky as if nothing had happened. When he reached the straw hut, Qi Yuan sent a voice transmission to their ears. "I am going to start seclusion to be enlightened about the Tao cultivation of a turbid immortal. Changshou, you are in charge of taking care of everything at our little Qiang peak. You can find me to discuss anything at any time. Ling, you still have to take note of your speech and actions. You have to respect your senior brother." Lan Ling replied as soft as the sound of a mosquito. Yes, master." Then, the layers of array formations around Qi Yuan's straw hut lit up and were isolated away from the outside. Li Changshou turned around and looked at her. "You told master." Lan Ling instantly stammered, this, a little. "Is it just a little or a lot?" "Definitely just a little." Li Changshou had a serious look. "Enter the house." Lan Ling slightly trembled and her expression sank. She instantly switched into a crying mode. After she entered her own straw hut, she took the cushion, closed her legs, and knelt. She lowered her head and pretended to cry. As he activated the surrounding array formations, Li Changshou said faintly, "Tell me." "What did you tell master?" "Senior brother, master forced me to tell him." Li Changshou was helpless. If someone heard this, they might have thought there was a human tragedy at the little Qiang peak. In his master's retirement plan, should he add a wife for him? He could consider this. Li Changshou actually did not care much about his little junior sister beating around the bush as she told him about what she had told their master. After all, there was a limit to what she knew. Based on his understanding of Lan Ling's personality, he already had a hunch regarding the situation today. In the dead of night, the array formations around the pill chamber had been completely activated. Li Changshou used the furnace to refine pills casually. He let the paper doll clones guard them, while the real paper dolls in the hidden underground chamber. Everything was going well. Li Changshou took out 3 jade tokens to play with and put away the thunder spell and inaction sutra. He then took out the true Samadhi Flames cultivation technique and forcibly engraved it in his head before he was lost in thoughts. The Great God-Conferment Tribulation. Although it was the most ideal state to secretly become a zenith heaven golden immortal, that required a long time. As the immortal sects of the three schools, the immortal Du sect was very likely involved in the Great God-Conferment Tribulation. The Great God-Conferment Tribulation was not just a plot like King Wu of Zhou overthrowing the tyrant King Zhou of Shang in the south continent of the mortal world. The three realms should be involved in this, and this targeted the Great Tribulation of the disciples from the three schools. Presently, the Middle Continent was becoming more and more prosperous. When the time came, they would naturally be destroyed miserably by the Great Tribulation. The East Continent's immortal sects probably could not escape from the tribulation either. However, Li Changshou did not intend to avoid this Great Tribulation. It was very simple. He wanted to climb ashore in advance. The Great God-Conferment Tribulation was actually the process by which the Jade Emperor of the Heavenly Courts established the authority to dominate heaven and earth. The nominal cause was that Jade Emperor Hao Tian had complained to the Tao ancestor that the three schools' disciples were rude and did not follow the orders of the Heavenly Courts. His title, as the ruler of the three realms, existed in name only. He did not have the dignity of a man, so he could not lift his head before the Queen Mother of the West. His manly grandeur had totally collapsed. Cough. That had gone off track. Based on the God-Conferment results, the three schools' disciples had become immortal in the heavenly courts. The saints no longer took the initiative to manifest them in the world, and they laid the foundation for the heavenly courts to manage the three realms. In that case, as long as Li Changshou got into the heavenly courts in advance and became an elder during the difficult times, he did not need to be a high-ranking official. He just had to conceal his cultivation level and become a low-ranking official so that his name could be in the immortal registry. After the Great God-Conferment Tribulation, his name would have been in the immortal registry, and he would have nothing to do with the tribulation. How could the God-Conferment calamity fall upon him again? Confer the gods in the heavenly courts again? That was unreasonable. When the conferred gods were appointed to the heavenly courts, there would be many geniuses. He could then succeed easily and seize the chance to retire. He could obtain the seniority of an elder of the heavenly courts and return to the mountains to continue cultivating steadily. What could he have against that? Li Changshou knocked on the table with his fingers and carefully considered the specific plan. His name had to be in the heavenly courts, immortal registry before the Jade Emperor complained to the Tao ancestor, in which he still had ample time. Letting his master become the Earth God was also a crucial step, as it could save him a lot of planning. Li Changshou would have to see whether his master was willing or not. Although the land was small and plentiful, and he would have little authority, he would be the Earth God after all. The Earth God might even find a wife. In front of the pill chamber, Li Changshou sat quietly on the sling chair. He opened his left palm, and a ball of blue flame gradually burned. This was not the complete version of the true Samadhi flames, so it was fine even if he revealed it. After all, it had been 3 months since exalted Wang Qing had rewarded him the true Samadhi flames cultivation technique. It was reasonable for him to be able to cultivate the most simple chi flame. Provided that he put in a lot of Dharma powers, the chi flame's power was simply not as good as 1/3 of the cold nether fire. Once he combined the chi flame, essence flame, and spirit flame into one as the true Samadhi flames, its power would probably be much stronger than the cold nether fire. Li Changshou had figured out the cultivation technique theory of the true Samadhi flames. He roughly had to use his chi, essence, and spirit to cultivate 3 fire seedlings and integrate them into the true Samadhi flames. This flame could often survive in the Tao body, burn evil spirits, and remove impurities, which could all be used to protect oneself. What made Li Changshou the most satisfied was that the flame's power was actually related to the fire seedling condensed by his essence, chi, and spirit. In other words, the power of the true Samadhi flames could constantly increase alongside his cultivation level. He would not be wasting too much time on a spell that he would not be able to put to full use after mastering it. A white cloud drifted over from the horizons. Li Changshou turned his left hand into a fist and extinguished that ball of flame. He got up and cupped his fists at the white cloud. The short Taoist on the white cloud revealed a slight smile and looked down. While maintaining at the height of 100 feet above, he said warmly, "Martial nephew Changshou, I heard that you reaped great benefits on your journey to the East Ocean 3 months ago. You also dealt with the Prince of the Dragon Palace properly when he provoked you. I did not recommend you for nothing." Li Changshou suddenly revealed a warm, gentle smile and said, "Thanks to your good intention, I was able to obtain the fire spell and thunder spell. I've specially prepared a feast for you today. Take it as a return feast for nurturing me." Jiu Wu, who had just returned to the mountains, smiled with his thick eyebrows and big eyes while clicking his tongue. "Why do I feel that? Something's up. You usually are unwilling to offer wine to me here. You went to the East Ocean after being coaxed and deceived by me. Martial nephew Changshou, could it be that you want to use the poisonous pills to plot against me?" Li Changshou was caught between laughter and tears and responded, "I'm only a disciple of the little Qiang Peak. Martial uncle, you are a perfected immortal, the line of succession of the heaven-breaking peak, and the sectarian officers that the elders think highly of. Even if I have the thoughts to plot against you, I don't have the guts at all. Moreover, I obtained huge benefits on the journey to the East Ocean." While he said that, Li Changshou fished out 2 night pearls from his sleeve. "These are the photo-taking balls. After improving them, I've turned them into sound-recording balls. Martial uncle, one for you and one for me. The entire feast today will be recorded in this ball. What do you think?" Jiu Wu became happy right away. With his hands behind his back, he jumped down the white cloud and looked up at Li Changshou. Then he reached out to take the sound-recording ball. "I want to see what's in your gourd. Martial uncle, you should do it first." Li Changshou had an increasingly warm smile. 2 short tables were placed at the side of the furnace. Little Ling displayed the culinary skills that her senior brother had helped her to nurture. The table was filled with sumptuous food and drinks, and there were 3 wine jars stacked up at the side. The 2 of them sat down. At the same time, they turned on the sound recording ball before placing it at the corner of the table. Afterward, Jiu Wu picked up jade chopsticks and tried each plate of dishes and jars of wine. "Are you really treating me to wine?" Jiu Wu said with a smile, "Could it be that there is some kind of harmless medicine inside each of these dishes and would be an incapacitating toxin when mixed together?" Li Changshou could not help but support his forehead with his hand. He shook his head and said with a sigh, "Martial uncle, what have you experienced outside that you have to surmise my intentions like this? After all, I'm not an evil person." "Ha ha ha, it was just a joke." Jiu Wu waved his hand and took the initiative to take up the wine jar to start the drinking. The 2 of them drank without restraint. After some time, half of the wine jar's contents had gone into their stomach. Jiu Wu had really only eaten the vegetables and not moved a single bit. Li Changshou slowly picked up each of the dishes and kept praising his junior sister's culinary skills. When the 2 of them got slightly drunk, Li Changshou lifted the 3rd wine jar. "It's here." "It's easy to guess this fellow's tricks." Jiu Wu laughed up his sleeves and wanted to see how Li Changshou was going to perform his tricks. Li Changshou said, "Martial uncle, this is a thank you gift from me. It's the bone-strengthening poisonous dragon wine." "Oh," Jiu Wu frowned and used his immortal powers to take the wine jar. He placed it dozens of feet away from him and opened it. He could not resist the smell and took a bit of wine over before he pinched it with his fingers to feel. Jiu Wu's eyes lit up. "Good wine," Li Changshou said seriously. "This has been brewed by 36 kinds of poisonous herbs and 12 kinds of poisonous insects, and is accompanied by the Ganges River's dry wine. After soaking them for 3 months, its toxicity neutralizes. It replenishes spirit, strengthens bones, and raises a man's grandeur. However, there is something about it. I don't know if you are able to bear with it. This thing has a rather strong medicinal effect." Jiu Wu frowned at Li Changshou, who also blinked his eyes at him. The 2 of them gave a knowing smile. They knew about it. Jiu Wu said with a smile, "What can I not bear with? I'm a person with a Tao companion. That was why I brewed this medicinal wine. Martial uncle, please try it." "Bring it here." Jiu Wu felt great ease. He took this jar of tonic wine and tried a sip of it. After analyzing it carefully for a while, he gulped down a huge mouthful of wine and felt energized at once. "Coincidentally, I've just come out of seclusion recently. I have nothing to be scared of. Martial uncle, don't drink too much in one go. I'm a perfected immortal. What should I be afraid of?" Then the 2 of them had another cup of wine. Jiu Wu had already been slightly drunk and his cup and dishes were in a mess. "Little Changshou, tell me, how are you planning to plot against me?" Jiu Wu hugged the wine jar and frowned. "I'm almost done drinking. I'll leave soon." Li Changshou shook his head with a bitter smile and said with a sigh, "Actually, I asked you over because I need your help." "Oh, there is a 9-color glazed array in the array formation that Martial Uncle has given me. I've analyzed it for half a month with Martial Aunt Juju, but I am still unable to set it up. I want to ask for your guidance." Ju Wu became happy right away. This 9-color glazed array was a trapping array that he had invented. Even if Li Changshou used this array formation to trap him, he could still get out of it. "Let's go. I'll take a look." Ju Wu put away the medicinal wine. Each of them took the sound recording ball and went to an open space at the back of the pill chamber. There were 81 small copper mirrors on the ground placed in a mysterious position. At one glance, Ju Wu could see the problem and pointed it out to Li Changshou with a laugh. Li Changshou walked forward with a happy expression. Based on Ju Wu's instructions, he adjusted a few copper mirrors, and the 81 copper mirrors instantly flashed brightly. The trapping array had been activated and trapped the two of them. Due to the silvery light around, the plants and birds could no longer be seen. Ju Wu was calm. He smiled and said, "Changshou, is this how you plan to plot against me? You've taken your revenge by being trapped here with me. It's not nice to deceive yourself." Li Changshou turned over and replied with a smile, "What are you saying, Martial Uncle? Why would I do that?" A wisp of flame blossomed on Li Changshou's legs and arms all of a sudden. Ju Wu froze and hurriedly shouted, "Why are you on fire?" "Martial Uncle, why did you?" Li Changshou shouted in a trembling voice and threw the sound recording ball in his hand in a random direction. In a blink of an eye, his surroundings had been devoured by the flames. He transformed into a paper doll and was instantly burned in the flame. Ju Wu's eyes widened immediately. The spirit flame of the true Samadhi flames, the man-forming paper cutouts from the 36 ways of the Big Dipper. This brat had learned to ignite a spirit flame so quickly. Was there such a brilliant mystical ability? Something was amiss. Ju Wu suddenly turned around and was surrounded by bright silvery light. At the moment, only he was left in the trapping array. This brat had actually used the sound recording ball to clear his name. Ju Wu suddenly saw the light and just scoffed. He calmly started to solve the array formation. "Changshou, you're still too inexperienced. What crimes are you going to accuse me of at the punishment hall? Sheesh, I have overestimated your thinking. I have many good friends. Moreover, I was the one who invented this array formation. Can I not find where the life gate is?" While he said that, Ju Wu took a few steps forward. The surrounding light and shadows rapidly rotated from a place glowing with white light to a place glowing with golden light. Ju Wu's smile immediately grew stiff. He lowered his head and predicted with his fingers. He could not help but scold. "How come it's a chain array again?" He moved at a fast pace and quickly arrived at a twinkling place. He walked again and turned back to his initial spot filled with silvery light. Even though he leaped up and rushed into the air, he landed in a place with golden light again. By this time, Ju Wu had realized that this array formation had been altered beyond his imagination. His escape technique had been blocked, and the basic array formation was indeed the 9-color glazed array that he had invented. He had come up with this array formation painstakingly, and it could not be solved by someone who was not a heaven immortal. Ju Wu's 5-feet-tall Dao body shook and gave off the smell of wine. He quickly predicted in his heart. This scheme had started when Changshou asked Ju to talk to him and invite him over to the feast. When he reached the little Qiang Peak, he found his marital nephew Changshou sitting there, cultivating the qi flame using his immortal senses. He was at fault for not checking for the real one. The feast was just a show, and his true revenge was this array formation. Since Ju Wu was the one who had invented the trapping array formation, he stepped into the array formation in full confidence, but had forgotten that this brat loved to set up chain arrays the most. However, he had been trapped. So what? Ju Wu sat cross-legged. He was a perfected immortal. So what if he would be trapped for a few months? Is this how this brat takes his revenge? Ju Wu chuckled to himself, but his smile suddenly turned rigid. So hot. Ju Wu's blood vessels all over his body seemed to be surging frantically. Then he started to sweat, and the turbid yang qi in his body quickly expanded. "Oh no, it's that medicinal wine. Why did I drink so much earlier?" Ju Wu felt his immortal body seem to be burning, and he was breathing heavily as if he was breathing out fire. He had started to break out in hot sweat all over. He immediately attempted to deplete the medicinal effect, but he realized that it had already entered his blood vessels. Ju Wu instantly stood up, looking very anxious. "Martial Nephew Chang, Changshou, let me out. That was not right. This fellow wanted to see how pitiful he was. Bear with it, I have to bear with it. Jiu Wu was a half-step heaven immortal. Could he not resist this bit of medicinal effect? He just had to remember that she was waiting for him at the hut, and he could do it after he returned. He was feeling worse. He definitely could not think of his senior sister. He could not make a fool out of himself. This brat's sound recording ball was still being used on him. Then Jiu Wu crushed the sound recording ball in his hand and meditated again. He quickly recited the Heart Movement Sutra and Heart Cleansing Mantra. An hour later, I'll go. This is a matter of eating. How can I bear this? Changshou, I admit defeat. In the future, I won't dare to plot against you anymore. How's that? Nobody answered him. Jiu Wu turned in circles anxiously. His immortal powers suppressed his turbid yang qi, and he walked at will in the trapping array. All of a sudden, he saw a wooden sign written with a few lines of words. He quickly went over to take a look. This was Heavenly Tao Oath, Remembrance Oath Sutra. He is this ruthless. From now onward, Jiu Wu shall not be allowed to do anything without permission from the immortal Du Sect's disciples of the Little Qiang Peak, disciples of Taoist priest Qi Yuan, and martial nephew Changshou. I shall not reveal any information about martial nephew Changshou to anybody, any Dharma artifacts, any tools. I shall not. But this is making it difficult for me. The contents of this oath are sloppy and ordinary. It's just a matter of keeping it a secret and not making any arrangements in the future. The consequences of breaking the oath is so vicious. I have to lose my manly grandeur. Jiu Wu stamped his feet from the anxiety and threw the wooden sign on the ground. How can I be coerced? The short Taoist bowed and slowly lay down. He continued suppressing his yang qi and clenched his teeth to bear with it. A few moments later, he was yelling with red eyes. He stood up, took the wooden sign, and started reciting the Remembrance Oath mantra aloud. The heavenly Tao felt it, and there was a dull thunder sound above the Little Qiang Peak. After he finished reading the oath, which was over hundreds of words, the surrounding array formations slowly dissipated, and even the outer array formations closed. Jiu Wu turned around, but he did not find anyone. He leaped up in a flurry and flew towards the heaven-breaking peak. Shishi, you must not enter seclusion. Shishi. After Jiu Wu left, Li Changshou's figure gradually emerged from the grassland. He took his sound recording ball and carefully put it away. He integrated this trapping array into the surrounding array formations. When he walked to the wooden sign, he looked at the handwriting on it that was starting to fade quickly. Li Changshou revealed an indifferent smile. He had settled this temporarily. 2 months later, it was the day to perform alchemy together. Little Xiaoshu, do you still have the medicinal wine you gave 5th senior brother? 4th senior sister said that she wants to use a few Dharma spell books to exchange for the recipe of the medicinal wine. You'll take your pick on the Dharma spells. There is still half a jar over there. I'll give you the recipe later after I sort it out. I'll choose the strongest Dharma spell, Li Changshou answered without looking up, and continued to separate the herbs in his hands. Jiu went to the corner. Just this, it smells very strange. Yes, it's only that, Li Changshou replied with a smile. Just when he lowered his head to continue with his work, he seemed to have remembered something. He said, women cannot drink this wine as they wish. This is the yang wine specially prepared for men. Something will happen if a woman drinks it. Clang-dong, a wooden ladle dropped to the ground and wine was splashed out. Jiu stared at Li Changshou. What? If a woman drinks this? She was so fast. Li Changshou was shocked and could not help having a bitter smile. Grow a beard, something like that. It's just growing a beard. You scared me. Jiu picked up the wooden ladle and smelled the wine in the jar at the side. She said in lingering fear, I thought my yin and yang would be out of balance, and I would turn into a manly woman. Li Changshou laughed softly and shook his head. He had always respected his martial aunt's logical thinking. Martial aunt, after I finish refining this furnace of pills, I will probably be in seclusion from half a year to 1 year and cultivate the true samadhi flames. I have prepared a year's worth of those few kinds of wine for you. However, it won't be good for you if you drink too much of these. You should drink in moderation. It's at the same old place on the shelf at the side of the medicinal wine jar. Half a year. Jiu took those few wine pots and replaced them with a few empty ones. She walked over with her hands at her back and warned him seriously. Although the true samadhi flames can be cultivated at the void return realm, what is needed in the beginning is to burn your essence, qi, and spirit to condense the fire seedling. Don't rush. Don't cultivate the Dharma spell into deficit essence qi, and end up losing your essence, qi, and spirit. That would be horrible. Li Changshou nodded his head with a smile and continued to bury his head to separate the herbs. Jiu yawned helplessly and mumbled, I've been stuck in a bottleneck in the past few years. I have problems in breaking through my cultivation level. However, I have encountered such situations a few times in the past. After I was stuck at the bottleneck for a few years, I managed to break through for no reason. After I break through, I will be entering seclusion for a few years. It might be decades, so you might not see me for a very long time. Li Changshou replied with a smile, Martial Ant, you've already mainly cultivated the Inaction Sutra, right? Yes. Jiu took a bamboo chair over and sat at the side of the table. She rested her head on the table while being bored to death. When you ascend to an immortal, you can also cultivate the Inaction Sutra. If you have good potential, you can also cultivate it at the Void Return Realm. Unfortunately. Oh, that's right. I heard fifth senior brother say that your master seems to be starting to achieve enlightenment on the Inaction Sutra. Yes, 2 months ago my master obtained a sutra sent by the sectarian officer within the sect. Li Changshou casually said, actually, given your attitude, you're most suitable to cultivate the Inaction Sutra. Jiu blinked her eyes. Little Changshou, you're saying the same thing as my master. Li Changshou replied, previously Martial Uncle Jiu Wu had also given me volume 1 of the Inaction Sutra. Aren't these words from the sutra? I see, Jiu murmured to herself and quietly watched Li Changshou sort out the herbs at the side. Unconsciously, she got lost in thoughts. A moment later, Little Xiaoshu, you're actually pretty good looking. Haha, why did I not realize that in the past? Hey, Li Changshou, who had prepared for alchemy, turned his head. He found that his martial aunt had fallen asleep on the table and was mumbling in her sleep. After immortal ascension, her immortal body was still pure. Although his martial aunt did not tidy up her mid-length hair all year round, it was still smooth and shiny black. She had a phoenix tail braid without any head ornaments, and she did not put on any cosmetics. She gave people the feeling that she was simple and pure. His martial aunt, who had fallen into a deep sleep, could be described as having good skin and a clear mind. Unfortunately, she was too lively when asleep. Li Changshou shook his head with a smile and walked out of the pilled chamber quietly. He looked at the little spiritual fish he had raised in the pond, which was shaped like yin-yang fish, and waited for Jiu to take a breather and wake up. After all, he had something to ask her. He could not be too harsh on his martial aunt, as he wanted to use her pure immortal powers for alchemy. After 2 days, Li Changshou was done with refining pills and temporarily sealed up the pill chamber. Then, he activated the array formations within 1.5 kilometers of the pill chamber. After he sent Jiu away, he went to find Lan Ling to tell her about his seclusion. Li Changshou was going to condense the fire seedling of the true samadhi flames during his seclusion this time, which would take him around half a year. Lan Ling, who was dressed in a loose training attire and analyzing the technique of spreading medicine, was suddenly somewhat bewildered. Senior brother, are you not entering seclusion in the pill chamber? It's easy to cause the place to explode while cultivating the true samadhi flames, Li Changshou replied with a smile. I will do a wooden raft later on and enter seclusion in the middle of the lake. That would be better. Lan Ling blinked and wanted to say something but hesitated. Li Changshou put a few porcelain bottles in her hands and told her about the usage and dosage of those bottles of pills. With her mind constantly pondering, Lan Ling still asked softly, Senior brother, you don't need to. Hide the true samadhi flames. Isn't that Dharma spell very formidable? Li Changshou knocked on his junior sister's head, with naturally not much force. Despite facing each other, Li Changshou still explained carefully to her by voice transmission, You've not had my lessons in the past few years. Have you forgotten what I've taught you? The true samadhi flames were bestowed by the master of Jiu Wu and Jiu. If I hide it and don't use it, the others will have more doubts. It's considered a trump card if the others cannot imagine, guess, or think of any information exposed based on your daily life, rather than just talking about its power. Lan Ling stuck her tongue out and learned obediently with her head lowered. Li Changshou took another 2 porcelain bottles and sent a voice transmission. Place these 2 bottles of pills in front of our master's house. These are the immortal pills for him to refine, and they have cleansing effects. Don't try them secretly. You will explode from the medicinal effect of the immortal pills. Lan Ling was happy right away. Then after master eats them, wouldn't he? It'll be hard. Li Changshou shook his head and sighed lightly. He wandered to the forest and was prepared to create the wooden rafts that he would be using later on. Lan Ling opened the jade bottle to smell it, and pure essence qi rushed forth. She took a breath lightly and felt heavy in her head. She returned to her house while feeling dizzy and quickly mediated to dispel the medicinal effect. Li Changshou laughed softly upon seeing that. He found an old forest, pulled up his sleeves, and started going all out. 2 days later. What's that sound? Lan Ling, who had just awakened from her meditation, got up to look outside the window. She opened her mouth and took a few breaths before she felt helpless. I will do a small wooden raft later on. When Lan Ling recalled what her senior brother had said and looked at the big, simple, 500 feet tower ship that had just been launched on the lake, she could not help slap her forehead. What had her senior brother misunderstood regarding the size? Lan Ling lowered her head to look at the curve on her training attire, and the corners of her mouth twitched. Stupid senior brother, he actually lost the concept of size thanks to martial Aunt Jiu Jiu. Actually, Li Changshou was not someone who emphasized pleasure. He put more importance on usability when he created some fun things. The small wooden raft was just formed simply by wood, and there were no restrictions. In terms of the difficulty in making it was indeed just a gadget. The place where he would enter seclusion had to have a simple warning array, isolation array, and anti-probe array. He needed some space to place and hide the base of these array formations. Apart from that, he still had some plans up his sleeves. The 2-floor-high tower ship had a total of 7 rooms of similar sizes, with each room interconnected and placed with a cushion. After he later entered seclusion and activated the surrounding array formations, he would also place a few paper dolls in each room. If someone came into contact with the array formations, the paper dolls, restrictions would be activated right away and transform into his own figure, which would be enough to pass off as genuine. That was simply a necessity to avoid being plotted against. Unfortunately, such a design was still not perfect. He would still have a 1/7 chance of being stabbed to death. Ling, I'm going to start seclusion now. After receiving Li Changshou's voice transmission, Li Changshou quickly walked to the door and waved her hand at him, who was standing on the tower ship. When Li Changshou conjured a seal with both hands, layers of array formations on the wooden raft were activated, covering a huge area of the lake below. The little wooden raft became fuzzier under the layers of light. In a short while, a lot of white mists emerged on the surface of the water. Lan Ling could no longer see where her senior brother was. Li Changshou put paper dolls in each room and secretly went to a cabin room. He fumbled to set up an array formation in the corner and opened a secret compartment, where the clear lake water was underneath. After conjuring a seal, he used his illusion spell to transform into a spiritual fish, entered the water without a sound, and swam towards the bottom of the water that had been shrouded by layers of array formations, leaving only 7 paper dolls in each cabin room. He had made such a huge wooden raft because he wanted to let these few layers of array formations cover the underwater. It was Li Changshou's 3rd seclusion place at the bottom. When his master had brought little Ling up the mountain in the past, he had also entered seclusion here and achieved initial success in condensing the cold nether fire. In the 5 elements, water was able to restrain fire. It was actually an exceptional technique to prevent self-explosion caused by the convergence of too much fire when cultivating a fire spell underwater. However, a small part of the little Qiang Peak, which used to be green and lush, was suddenly bare. The East Ocean Crystal Palace. How dare you, Aoye? How dare you spout nonsense and disrespect your elders? You have disgraced the prestige of the race and defamed the honor of the race. Do you know what kind of offense this is? In the spacious, empty palace of the second prince, the young Aoye from the dragon race had been tied to an iron pillar by chains. He closed his eyes tightly and vaguely heard the scoldings at the side of his ear. He sneered and endured the pain on his back, still looking very firm. Aoye now felt that this crystal palace was very absurd and incomparably ridiculous. When he had stood at the celebration feast on the other day, he faced his father and said, I want to become a disciple of the immortal Du sect and cultivate like the saint of the 3 schools. That shock, disbelief, and change in expression of the dragon's head. Those ridiculous scoldings due to his disgraceful behavior and disgrace brought upon the dragon race. The aura rushing forth from those dragon experts crushed his 10-year-old body on the spot. The ones who had scolded him on that day were either his father's brothers or the older dragons. They had the right to scold this nephew of theirs. Those chancellors of those races of the ocean and those generals of the dragon race without the bloodline of the dragon king had also not dared to utter a word. However, they shot him a contemptuous look. When he had gone to pay respect to the saints, he had been regarded as disgraceful. When he had gone out to become a disciple and cultivate, he had been regarded as a rebel of the dragon race. This was ridiculous, really ridiculous. This is extremely ridiculous. Aoyi could not help but berate with a painful look on his delicate face. Ice-cold force appeared on the iron pillar behind his back, and icicles pierced through his fair, clear, and smooth back, causing Aoyi to tremble from the pain. However, he still had a sober gaze, and his determination did not vanish at all. A few moments ago, his mother had just left and persuaded him to admit his mistakes early. "My son, are the skills from our race not enough for you to learn? Are the treasures from our race not enough for you to play with? Why did you have to do such absurd things, and even say those absurd words before so many uncles of our race? You want to join the saints, but did you know that they don't take in disciples from the dragon race except for the Jai school?" That Chan school's master had taken in an illegitimate dragon as his disciple in the past. He had used his treasures to strip away the last destiny from the dragon race and place them on his disciple. How can our race forget such a humiliation? My son, who has confused you? How could Aoyi not understand these words from his mother and know the truth? One of the 12 golden immortals of the Chan school, perfected yellow dragon, was clearly a bloodline of the ancestral dragon. Back then, he had only been seriously injured and landed in the Kunlun Mountains. He had been cared for by the 3 Pure Ones, who had yet to become saints, and became an ornamental dragon of the 3 Pure Ones. Before the ancient saint had appeared, the dragon race had treated that as a disgrace. They had severed all ties with perfected yellow dragon and even removed his name from the dragon registry. Afterward, the 3 Pure Ones had become saints. The dragon race had not been able to put down their dignity to curry favor with perfected yellow dragon. Instead, they had started to spread rumors within the race and called him an illegitimate dragon. As for the so-called saints did not take in disciples of the dragon race. After the 3 Pure Ones had become saints, a group of experts from the dragon race had brought the young dragon forward to be a disciple at the Golden Turtle Island and were very respectful to the saints. However, they had heard that the Grand Master of Heaven took in the least disciples. He had only allowed the most outstanding disciples of the dragon race to become disciples of the saints. They had not become a disciple of the saints directly. The experts of the dragon race had turned back and felt that the saints were humiliating them. What kind of absurdity was that? This was absurd. Aoyi trembled lightly all over, and the light on the iron pillar on his back gradually weakened. I, Aoyi, have to endure this. Only he, the second prince of the Dragon King, could completely become humble and a disciple of the immortal Du sect, which had a rank in the middle of the immortal sects of the 3 schools. Even if he knelt before the immortal Du sect and became an in-name disciple, could he break through the pointless arrogance of the dragon race and tear apart their twisted self-esteem? If these humiliations still could not awaken the dead-drunk dragon race, then he would stand on the peak of all spirits as a saint. At that time, he would ask these ancient elders, what was the way out for the dragon race? After taking a breath, Aoyi opened his mouth and screamed, "Let me out! I want to see my father. I want to go to the immortal Du sect and become a disciple and learn the Tao." A group of maidservants outside the hall felt sorry for him on their teary, delicate faces. However, they were stopped by the flood dragon troops and could not go near the second prince. 3 months later, above the Crystal Palace deep in the East Ocean, after a series of matters, the young dragon rebelling, his mother pleading for him, and his father ordering a thorough investigation, a fish spirit, who was a musician teaching the prince in the ocean, became a scapegoat. The fish spirit had been cut into pieces on the spot and put between scallions, ginger, vinegar, and garlic. It was unfortunate and lamentable. During the primordial times, there was no wasabi, and the way of sashimi had yet to be perfected. Presently, the second prince of the Dragon Palace, Aoyi, was tied to a huge immortal carry ship, which was speeding to the border between the South Ocean and the East Ocean. Besides Aoyi, there were only a few flood dragon troops and a turtle immortal with white eyebrows and beard on the ship. This turtle immortal, who had retired a long time ago, sat beside Ao Yi and was trying to persuade him with deep sighs. Your Majesty, how did you get involved with the tiny immortal Du sect? What virtues and capabilities do they have? Even if His Majesty let you become a disciple there, he would not dare to take you in either. You have to think of His Majesty too. He is now holding his ground amid the opinions of the masses and suppressing all the voices so that you can go and become a disciple of a saint. This time, I will take you to become a disciple under the great immortal of the 3 saints of that Tao sect, the Black Cloud Immortal. Although this great immortal does not have a high reputation, he is ranked first among the 7 immortals in the Jai school and is thought highly of by the 3 saints of the Tao sect. He only has one golden turtle, who comes from the same race as me, as his disciple. Back then, we had some friendly relations too. Your Majesty, this is going according to your wishes. Don't create any more big trouble. Aoya turned his head to look at one side, still looking unresigned. However, he was only 10 years old after all. Even though he had received many years of egg education, he had truly been born for 10 years. The old turtle kept persuading him at the side, and Aoya gradually hesitated. Does this great immortal have any methods to become a saint? That is for sure. The turtle immortal seized the opportunity and started telling Aoyi about how impressive this great immortal was and how the Grand Master of Heaven liked him. However, he was rather low profile and did not reveal his talents outside. Soon, the turtle immortal sighed and sent a voice transmission to Aoyi. Your Majesty, I can see what you're trying to do. However, this isn't as simple as you think it is. You will not obtain a good outcome by just tormenting yourself. Flaunting is just like a dream. It becomes frozen after you wake up from the dream. Nobody is willing to wake up from it. You have to empathize with His Majesty. He is the person sitting at the highest seat in the dragon race, so he cannot do anything easily. Otherwise, the place will be in danger. Aoya pondered and then gradually nodded his head. In short, I can now roam around the huge primordial world outside the Dragon Palace. To become a disciple of the great immortal, he still had to rely on his status as the prince of the Dragon Palace. How could he get rid of the embarrassment of the Dragon Palace? Which of the few other disciples of the Dragon Palace could become a disciple of a great immortal? What he needed to search was the way out for the dragon race, and not the way out for himself, the second prince of the East Ocean's Dragon Palace. He had to first secure this turtle immortal. He would talk about any other things someday in the future. In the roaring ocean breeze, Aoya gradually revealed a smile on his face, showing the innocence that was just like his own age. That turtle immortal was gradually relieved. Deep in the dense forest of the heaven-breaking peak in the immortal Du sect at the 9 Jiu Immortals cultivation ground, Jiu's huge gourd drifted over from the little Qiang Peak's direction. As if she had no energy, she walked back to her own house in a crestfallen manner. She slowly sat down on the wooden steps in front of the house and slowly leaned down. She lay down softly, just like a melting clay figurine, hugging her gourd and lying there for a long while. I'm so bored. It has only been 3 months since little Xianxia entered seclusion. Why do I feel that it seems more than 3 years? Nobody is playing with me. Even senior sister is accompanied by senior brother, while he goes to accompany someone else. After big senior sister and second senior brother, 4th senior sister and 5th senior brother, 6th senior sister and 7th senior brother, it should be time for 8th senior brother to be with 9th junior sister. I didn't expect 8th senior brother to follow in 3rd senior sister's steps and go out of the heaven-breaking peak. As the 9th junior sister with a bitter fate, I have to be lonely without anyone accompanying me. I'm even Master's final disciple. Ugh! The windows of the house next door were pushed open, looking radiant. Jiu Shi, who had seemed to be hundreds of years younger recently, looked over at this side. After hearing Jiu harping on something, she could not help laughing. Jiu Shi drifted out from the window, wearing a rainbow-colored dress like a fairy in a painting, and landed beside Jiu. She sat on the wooden steps and pinched Jiu's nose. Senior sister. Jiu hugged Jiu Shi and closed her eyes before she howled in grief. Accompany me to the little Qiang Peak. I want to play Fight the Great God. I want to play Immortal Life Simulation. Jiu Shi suddenly laughed softly and patted her little junior sister's head. Foolish junior sister, how can I go to the little Qiang Peak? Why not senior sister? Won't you feel embarrassed if I go there? What should I be embarrassed about? Jiu cranked her head. 4th senior sister, did you misunderstand something? I'm just having an aunt-nephew relationship with little Xiaoshu. "Oh, is that so?" She smiled with her eyes full of aggression. Jiu could not help but blink and shrink her neck. "Isn't that so?" "Right. A martial aunt and martial nephew perform alchemy and set up array formations every day, are with each other for the whole day, and are very intimate." "What intimate? He is sick." She froze and quickly asked, "What illness does he have?" "Martial nephew Changshou has an unmentionable disease. That is a huge problem." "It's not an unmentionable disease. Little Xiaoshu cannot be touched by any woman besides his junior sister. Otherwise, he would twitch all over." Jiu said with a smile, "He watched his junior sister grow up, so he is fine with her. He's also fine with me if it's just touching fists or high five." She hugged her arms and muttered to herself before suddenly saying, "How did this illness come about? Can you tell me in detail?" "When I brought little Xiaoshu to the North Continent the last time." A moment later, she hugged her ninth junior sister and laughed. She said something to Jiu, which made the latter be at a loss. Then she could not help but rest her forehead on her hand. "This brat actually dared to deceive me. Calm down, little Jiu. Such a man who preserves his chastity is a treasure rarely seen in the world. Don't miss the opportunity." Jiu was suddenly embarrassed and stamped her feet in anger. "Senior sister, what are you talking about? How I can be with him? Oh my, I'm going back to seclusion. Aren't you going to be a guard at the priming meet after a few days?" "Oh, that's right. Can't I enter seclusion for a few days?" Jiu got away and went to her house. She laughed softly and drifted after her. "Little Jiu, you don't have to be shy in front of me. I'll teach you how to dress and apply makeup first." I don't want to." "Come on, let me have a look at your current figure." "Fourth senior sister, don't touch me anyhow. This is annoying, ya?" As the sun set in the west, the laughter of the two fairies drifted here and there nearby. In the house next door, a short Taoist, who looked deeply in trouble and haggard, shook his head and activated the array outside Jiu's house. Then, he looked at the complete dine-and-dash meal on the table in front, and the corners of his mouth could not help but twitch. Jiu was still going to be a guard at the priming meet in the North Continent this time, because there had been a small problem the other time. This time, the sect had sent a perfected immortal to go with her. Only 2 people were going to the North Continent. On the day of the priming meet, the disciple representative Xianxia, whose reputation had recently surged more and more, carried her own huge sword on her back and was wearing a fiery red dress. She appeared at the venue on time. However, when everyone had split into teams, she did not join in the practice. Instead, she turned and went back to her cave abode for seclusion. Thus, the 2 disciples heading to the North Continent received superb treatment of having secret guards exclusive for a perfected immortal. Going to and from the North Continent took several months. In the few months after returning, Jiu had kept remembering what her 4th senior sister had told her previously. Gradually, Jiu, who had thought that she had no other feelings for Li Changshou besides being purely playmates, started to immerse in self-doubt. Could it be that she had feelings for little Changshou, and she didn't know about that? That was impossible. Although having a martial aunt-martial nephew relationship was a little exciting, she had always been taking care of little Changshou as her junior. However, she had been careless and had been fed by him. As Jiu thought more about this, she felt so confused that she could not concentrate while meditating. Another few months had passed again. When the paper crane, which brought the message that Li Changshou wanted to invite her for alchemy, landed in her hand, Jiu jumped in joy. Then she froze. "My heart couldn't have been really moved by a martial nephew, who is only around 100 years old, right? There are some words that you will only know after asking." 4th senior sister's laughter was still winding around her ear. Jiu sat on the bed and muttered to herself before she lifted her hand to smash the bedboard. "What are you afraid of? Just go ask him." Jiu changed into a clean hemp garment, sat on the huge gourd, and rushed to the little Qiang peak. This time, Li Changshou wanted to refine poisonous pills so that he could be more prepared when he went out for the tribulation transcendence. By the time Jiu rushed over, Li Changshou had prepared various kinds of poisonous herbs and put himself in layers of protective equipment. After Jiu had worn such a cumbersome, protective suit, for the first time, she had never heeded his advice to wear it for the second time. This made Li Changshou extra careful in controlling the poisonous pills, toxin circulation when he was refining pills each time, lest he accidentally provided immortal powers for his martial aunt. During alchemy, the 2 of them were talking endlessly just like before. However, Jiu was still thinking about what her 4th senior sister had said. Despite the 32 hours alchemy and her trying to ask dozens of times, she could not find the appropriate context. It's just one sentence. Why is it so hard to ask? I couldn't have. How is that possible? Am I someone who goes for someone younger? Ask him, and everything will be fine. Jiu took a deep breath and lifted her hand to tidy up her hair ends at the side of her ear while looking at Changshou, who was concentrating at the side. With her utmost effort, she asked in the weakest tone, "How did I perform during the alchemy this time?" "You're doing well as usual," Changshou answered with a laugh in his suit. "Martial Ant, your immortal powers are indeed very helpful." The poisonous pills trembled slightly, and Changshou immediately adjusted the pill effect. Jiu blinked her eyes and continued to adjust her voice. "Then Martial Nephew Changshou, what do you think of me?" During the crucial moment for the pill formation, Changshou, who was concentrating on controlling the properties of the poisonous pills, could not hear her properly since he was wearing too many anti-poison Dharma artifacts, and Jiu had spoken too softly. He only heard Martial Nephew, and what? However, the topic they had always been discussing seemed to be. Changshou nodded lightly and replied with a smile without turning back. "Very much and very stable. What is even rarer is that it is pure without any impurities." Changshou frowned and stared at the poisonous pills that were going to form soon in the furnace. He added, "If only I could also have won it." Jiu opened her mouth slightly. She was petrified. She pointed at Changshou with a trembling finger. Do you know what you're saying?" Changshou answered. "What's wrong? Did I say anything wrong? Did I say anything wrong?" "Very strong, and what is even rarer is that it is pure to the point without any impurities. If I could only have it." Who was so disgraceful like that? Jiu's slightly round face instantly blushed red from her neck downward. Wisps of white smoke seeped through her forehead. She took half a step back and wanted to say something, but her voice was trembling. She turned around and dashed to the distance. After 2 steps, she rushed into the air and flew toward the heaven-breaking peak. Changshou was disturbed by the sound of the wind and turned around to look in confusion. "She left. She's not going to take her wine reward today." Martial Ant Jiu's immortal powers were indeed very stable, powerful, and pure. Otherwise, she could not have achieved pill formation in her first furnace of pills and saved his 8 other materials. He wished he could have such genuine immortal powers like Martial Ant Jiu. However, he was going to go through the tribulation transcendence soon. Martial Ant wouldn't have misunderstood anything, right?" Changshou quickly reacted. "Never mind. Concentrate and prepare for pill formation." He could just explain these trivial matters later on, in between the group of mountain peaks in the immortal Du sect. Jiu, who sat and flew on the huge gourd, took the wine gourd on her waist and raised her head before making gulping sounds. Then she hit the forest halfway up the mountains on the heaven-breaking peak, just like an arrow taking off, causing the entire forest to shake lightly and birds flying everywhere. A little fairy in a hemp garment was lying on the fallen leaves of the thick growth of grass under the tree in the forest. She covered her face with her pair of delicate hands and breathed heavily. But soon, she heaved a sigh of relief. Her delicate face was flushed red. One of her fair arms covered her forehead while the other was lifted to block the sunlight from the gaps in the treetop. "Very pure. Pooh, what am I talking about? Seriously," she took out those brightly colored immortal dresses, which her 5th senior brother had given and 4th senior sister had made for her, from the storage sack. "What am I thinking about again? He's my Martial Nephew." Jiu quickly threw the storage sack. Not long after that, she turned to look at it. It was not that she could not give it a try. She just would not let anyone else see. One, it can also mean be pregnant in this context. Tilda, why do I dislike this? It's very revealing. Isn't this just adding 2 pieces of cloth behind another piece of cloth? Wouldn't I corrupt someone's eyes if I wear this out? This is even more alluring. The most important place is not even covered well. Did 4th senior sister wear this for 5th senior brother to see? No, that's not right. I think I have to wear them all. He. Since early morning, Jiu had been busy in her house until the afternoon. She had always been standing in front of her house with her delicate hands on the doorknob, unable to pull it open for the time being. "I just have to go out for a stroll." "Yes, I just have to go out for a stroll." After taking in a light breath, Jiu slowly pulled open the wooden door in front of her and stepped out with her blue embroidered flower cloth shoes. In a split second, there was a rainbow in the mountain farmland shrouded by this large array formation. A few gazes were seen, and voices were heard. When they heard a few clanking sounds, The disciples going to draw water in the pill chamber had a slip on their carrying poles. The disciples clearing up the weeds in the flower bed dropped their hose, while the young ladies holding onto a few bottles of pills threw the trays in their hands. Ahem! Juju cleared her throat and walked half a step forward with her hands behind her back. She subconsciously straightened her body with her head high, scanning every place calmly. A few male disciples quickly lowered their heads and pretended not to see it, but they secretly looked up to take a few peeks. A young man who had just gone up the mountains not long ago flushed red. It's no big deal. Isn't wearing anything the same? I didn't offend public morals. I'm wearing more than my usual short dress and blouse. Juju licked her lips, looking very hesitant. However, she quickly made up her mind. She had nearly forgotten to summon the huge gourd that she had brought out and turned it 10 feet long. She was supposed to get used to sitting up. However, it was awkward when she thought about her current dressing. She was in a light pink dress, which was made from unknown material but was still light. Therefore, she gathered up her dress and gently crossed her leg over the other. She sat on the front of the huge gourd and rose to the sky. Just when she flew out of the heaven-breaking peak, she saw a short Taoist with dark circles on both eyes on the white clouds. He drifted over slowly while holding onto a scroll. Juju stopped her gourd, used her immortal power on it, and coughed deliberately. Cough, cough, cough. Ju Wu, who passed by, looked up at her and revealed a courteous smile to her. He cupped his fists while holding onto the scroll and landed halfway on the mountain. Juju froze and rolled her eyes before sitting on the gourd and continued her journey. Ju Wu, who had landed in a large array, looked down all of a sudden. I seem to have seen Junior sister just now. No, that's not right. She has always been wearing the same set of clothes for hundreds of years. How could she have dressed like that? I must have seen it wrongly. I'm at the losing end recently. Fortunately, senior sister is finally in seclusion. I can finally replenish my strength. After sighing, Ju Wu continued studying the 32 methods of cultivating essence and consolidating qi scroll in his hands while going towards his house. Just when he walked into his house, the short Taoist smelled a lingering fragrance from a fairy and could not help but feel an inexplicable chill. His body had responded. It was purely a physical response. He had always been deeply attracted to fourth senior sister, with his love being more than gold. He definitely was not afraid at all. Ju Wu then recalled his heroic performance during this period and revealed a knowing smile. Ever since he had drunk the poisonous dragon wine concocted by martial nephew Changshou, even though his waist had become more flexible, he had much more confidence before his senior sister, and he was on better terms with his Tao companion. Cultivating the Tao to seek longevity became more pleasurable and interesting. However, he was still unhappy about that brat playing tricks on him. Ju Wu muttered to himself and was lost in thoughts as he sat behind the desk. Pay someone back his own coins. Develop something similar to this pill to lure him to this array formation. This brat might really endure it and won't be embarrassed. Then I'll ask little Ju to help add fuel to the fire. That will not work. Am I giving him benefits or playing a trick on him? If junior sister doesn't retaliate, wouldn't I be at the losing end? I'm restricted by that oath to have a battle of wits and guts with this brat. I have lesser ways, but this is even more interesting. Wait for it, little thief. I will eventually find your loophole. When Juju flew to the sky above the little Qiang peak, she pursed her lips and could not help muttering to herself. Seriously, how come these few people I met on the way sized me up with a strange gaze? Aren't they afraid of being beaten up? The huge gourd slowly landed. Her spiritual senses scanned the little Ling peak to find that Li Changshou was teaching Lan Ling. Juju blinked her eyes and deliberately concealed her aura fluctuation. She wanted to see how the two of them would react when she suddenly appeared. She wouldn't scare them, right? Juju frowned and felt somewhat helpless. As she sneakily approached the straw hut, she heard a clear voice from inside even from a distance. The state of mind is insignificant, and the Tao manifests in it. The qi returns to the sea and condenses in the primordial soul. In this sentence, the hardest thing to understand is the qi returns to the sea. The qi here does not refer to one's cultivated dharma powers, clear qi, or turbid qi. It refers to the little connate essence qi in one's body. This is a treasure from the mother's womb and is very important for cultivators. Li Changshou was sitting on a round-backed chair in the house, looking very relaxed. Lan Ling was listening carefully to him on the meditation cushion. Juju walked into the house quietly on tiptoes. Then, She turned around and lifted her arms to do a tiger claw posture while rushing inside and shouting, "Hurrah!" Lanling, who sat sitting with her eyes closed, could not help but laugh. On the other hand, Changshou put the sutra from his hand down helplessly and looked at Jiu, who had changed her dressing, with a smile. Jiu widened her eyes and said, "Why aren't you guys frightened?" Lanling pretended to be flustered and slightly shouted, "I've been scared by Martial Ant." However, just when she turned her head, she could not help but exclaim, "Martial Ant, why are you suddenly wearing a dress? What's wrong? Can I wear it?" Jiu secretly observed Changshou's reaction. When she turned in a circle in front of Lanling, her dress and beautiful hair floated lightly, causing the house to be filled with a faint fragrance. At that moment, Lanling was also secretly watching her senior brother's reaction. When she found him nodding his head with a smile, she was slightly relieved. "It's good that senior brother wasn't startled," Lanling said in a soft laugh. "Of course, you can. Martial Ant is usually very pretty, but you're even more dazzling now. I wouldn't dare to drift on the white cloud with you." Jiu blinked her eyes at Changshou. "Changshou, what do you think? Very nice." Changshou nodded his head and praised her. When a woman had a good relationship with himself, just like his junior sister and Martial Ant in front of him, and they suddenly changed into a new dress or a new piece of head ornament and sought praises, he should not be stingy with praises as an elegant man. However, when he thought that there might have been misunderstandings the day before, Changshou added, "I might be a little not used to it after looking at it all of a sudden." "I see." Jiu looked down at what she had matched after carefully picking them for half a day, looking somewhat disappointed. At the side, Lanling sighed in her heart. Senior brother is still like this, as expected. It's really too hard to approach such a person like him who can't wait to refuse any karma. This is troublesome indeed. Lanling very soon revealed a faint, slight smile and took the initiative to go over. She whispered at Jiu's ear, "Martial Ant, is this your first time dressing up like this?" Jiu quickly replied, "Yes, that's right. I wanted to change my dressing style all of a sudden. When you're dressed like this, having light makeup is more suitable." Lanling whispered something at Jiu's ear, and Jiu's eyes lit up before she pulled Lanling to behind the screen at the side. Upon seeing that, Changshou shook his head slightly and continued to read with the slip held up. When he heard them chattering with a low voice, he thought a little in his heart without any change in his expression. Not long after, amid Lanling's constant exclamation, Jiu came out from behind the screen and looked at Changshou while being pleased with herself. "How's this?" Changshou looked up and smiled even wider. At that moment, it seemed that his Martial Ant had become another person. She had put on face powder, drew the ends of her eyebrows thinly, put on some rouge, moistened her red lips, wore a thin silk skirt and a lined jacket, and had phoenix tail braids. She seemed more exquisite than before and had more feminine charms. "Not bad." Changshou showed her a thumbs up. "You are the top 3 most beautiful among the women I've seen." "Really?" Jiu blinked her eyes. For some reason, the kind of strange, subtle feelings entangled in her heart over the past 2 days had dissipated. She felt happy and relieved as a result. "Of course, it's true. Do you have a misunderstanding of your own charms?" Changshou replied with a smile. "Martial Ant, you usually don't wear makeup, and you're already a person that many male disciples in the sect admire." "Pooh, how can that be?" Jiu rolled her eyes, but her eyes were still smiling. She said indifferently, "I don't care much about these. After all, I cultivate the Tao to seek longevity. Let's not talk about this. Are you still giving a lesson? If you're not going to do so, let's play Fight the Great Gods." Changshou said, "Giving a lesson is something I need to do after all." "Martial Ant, you rarely come here." Lanling hugged Jiu's arm. "Fight the Great Gods." Changshou could not help but rest his forehead on his hand. How could it be rarely when she came around 7 to 8 times a month? Jiu firmly agreed. "Fight the Great Gods. All right. Since the 2 of you are so excited, we'll find a chance to give Ling another lesson later on." Changshou shook his head. The 2 of them were already cheering at the side and skillfully set up the short table and cushions. When she sat down, Jiu felt somewhat awkward. She used Changshou's straw hut next door to change back into her most comfortable hemp garment, short blouse, and short skirt. She replaced the shoes with embroidered flowers into soft, comfortable, special straw shoes and removed the light makeup on her face. This straw was not just ordinary straw. This was the immortal grass that Jiu had meticulously nurtured. This was indeed much more comfortable. Before Jiu went out of the straw hut, she recalled Li Changshu's tone earlier on. Top 3 most beautiful. Jiu unconsciously smiled and mumbled, "This brat is really disgraceful, he even dared to say such things." Jiu opened the door and rushed to the straw hut next door like the wind. Competing voices were heard after some time. "Fight the great gods, double, extra double. You're the great god this round, I'm a little immortal, extra double. I have 12 spirit stones at the moment. Make your move, Ling, I have 17 cards. Can you defeat me today?" When it was quiet in the middle of the night, Li Changshu left the straw hut. His martial aunt and junior sister were a little drunk. At the moment, they were sound asleep on the bed. He was in charge of closing the door and opening the array, lest their pitiful look was seen by others the next morning. When he returned to the pill chamber, he entered the secret underground room. Li Changshu sat on the meditation cushion at the corner, closed his eyes, and concealed his spirit and qi. A ball of orange-red flame slowly condensed between his palms and was later absorbed into his body. It started to slowly roam around and forge his primordial soul and Tao body. 9-petaled lotus flowers slowly circulated him. At the moment, these lotus flowers were the size of a fist, and the veined patterns on them were incomparably clear. They had become more perfect and had indistinct, mysterious Tao runes. However, Li Changshu still felt that it was lacking. Thus, he was hesitant to enter the 9th stage of the Tao requital realm. In the early morning, Lanling, who was sound asleep, was awakened by a huge force. Before she could come back to her senses, she heard Jiu shout excitedly, "Ha ha ha, I've broken through the bottleneck. Ling, remember to tell your senior brother. I'll go back first to seclusion." "Oh, huh," she broke through after waking up. Lanling responded in a daze. When she opened her eyes, she saw Jiu finding her shoes on the floor. At that moment, martial aunt Jiu was rather excited. Her cultivation level once again took another firm step towards the heaven immortal realm. She rushed out of the straw hut and hopped onto the gourd before quickly going to the heaven-breaking peak. "Remember to let your senior brother know that I'll help him with alchemy once I come out of seclusion." Lanling was in a daze at the side of the bed for a while. After yawning twice, she walked to the dresser. When she recalled the trivial matter that her martial aunt had done the day before, Lanling smiled and then sighed. "It's really carefree after immortal ascension." "Junior sister." A voice transmission entered her ear and she subconsciously responded. "Here," Li Changshu continued his voice transmission. "I've heard what martial aunt has said. I will roughly enter seclusion for 3 months. After that, I might go out. Do you need any pills? I will only return after 3 to 5 years this time." Senior brother is going out to go through his tribulation transcendence. Lanling was happy but then pouted unhappily. She was naturally happy for her senior brother and was unhappy because he would only return after 3 to 5 years. He had not left her for that long ever since she had gone up the mountains. "There's nothing I need. Senior brother, you just have to take good care of yourself," Lanling mumbled softly. Peals of laughter were heard in the voice transmission. Changshou warned her, "I will wake up Master before I leave and tell him not to enter seclusion in the next few years. Remember not to run all around the place. You have to always remember what I've previously told you at all times and don't be carelessly bullied." "I got it, senior brother. It isn't too late to say these after you come out of seclusion." Lanling turned her eyes. "Are you going to slip away?" Li Changshu laughed in the pill chamber and did not send a voice transmission anymore. He looked down at the wisp of blue light emerging in his palm. He had not expected the 9th stage of Tao requital to come much earlier. Currently, his Tao realm was like having rapid growth. It had the urge to soar at any time. Thankfully, it could still be suppressed. After attaining the 9th stage of Tao requital, he would very likely face the heavenly tribulation. The tribulation transcendence had to be also put in his itinerary. Li Changshu had long decided to go out to face the tribulation transcendence. Firstly, he did not want to reveal his cultivation level. Secondly, he did not want others to watch his heavenly tribulation. After all, the tribulation transcendence was his own matter, and the mountain-protecting array formation was not affected at all. He would find a hidden place outside without any people to go through his tribulation transcendence, which was not much different from the sect's safety factor. However, if he wanted to successfully slip away from the sect, he had to spend some effort. Li Changshu sighed lightly. "Fortunately, there are still fish." The rules of the Immortal Dew sect were strict, but most were targeted at the disciples that had yet to achieve immortal ascension. They restricted the disciples' speech and actions, supervised their cultivation, and ensured their safety. Among the immortal Du sect disciples, Li Changshou was an outstanding cultivator in the second stage of the Void Return Realm. Therefore, there were rather strict restrictions on him to go out. This was one of the reasons he had chosen to go to the priming meet in the North Continent to search for herbs. For the sake of going out of the sect to face tribulation transcendence, Li Changshou had already prepared to go to the Bai Fan Hall to apply for a reason to go out. The disciples had one chance to go back to their hometown and visit the grave. Since he had joined the immortal sect, he was not linked to the mortal world anymore. Hence, he should completely sever ties with them. However, a human heart was grown from the flesh, while the Tao heart also had tribulation in the mortal world. The forefathers of the human race thought highly of loyalty and filial piety. Although cultivators had broken free from the mortal world, they could not mourn in front of their parents who had raised them. They should visit their grave and worship them. The immortal Du sect had done pretty well in this by learning from many major sects from the Middle Continent. After new disciples, who came from the mortal world, entered the sect, an outer sect sectarian officer would be especially in charge of that. Every decade, they would look after the new disciples' parents and give them gold and silver for their livelihood. They would also tell them how the disciples were doing in the sect and give them some pills to remove their illnesses and talismans to avoid a calamity. However, they would not extend their lifespan. Life and death were destined, and fate was limited. The immortal Du sect did not want to attract too much unnecessary karma either. After the disciples' parents passed away, they would also let that disciple know and allow them to go back to their hometown for 3 years to pay respects to their parents, so that they could completely break off any links with the mortal world. 18 years ago, Li Changshou had been informed by the sect that his parents in the mortal world had both passed away. Under the care of the immortal Du sect, his parents, who were ordinary herdsmen in the nomadic tribe in the South Continent, had lived over 100 years old without suffering any illnesses or calamity in their lifetime. Li Changshou actually did not have much impression on his parents in this lifetime. After all, he had been brought to the mountains by his master very early on. He had exchanged a lifetime of clothing and food for them. They did not need to worry or suffer illnesses, and they had faced fewer calamities. When he had received the notice from the sect, Li Changshou had wanted to visit their grave right away. However, since he was prepared to go through tribulation transcendence outside, it had been suppressed temporarily. This was somewhat troublesome. If the outer sectarian officer passed by the disciples' hometown while doing errands outside in the 3 years that the disciples visited their parents' graves, they would have to take a look at the disciples' current situation. Li Changshou had made preparations regarding this point. He had long been on good terms with the elders of the Bai Fan Hall, who were in charge of the disciples. He truly had a good friendship with them. This elder was not like the other elders. Most of the elders in the Bai Fan Hall were old perfected immortals. For example, Elder Ji was in charge of matters inside and out of the sect. The true elders of the immortal Du sect were cultivating in different peaks, and they did not ask about miscellaneous matters. They could not obtain this reputation unless they were at the heaven immortal realm. 3 months later, Li Changshou shouted to wake up his master, who was in seclusion, and told him that he had to go back to his hometown to visit the grave, and his master had to take care of his junior sister. Old Taoist priest Qi Yuan naturally allowed him. He did not think much about it, and he even persuaded Li Changshou to put down the link he had with the mortal world early and concentrate on the immortal Tao. On the other hand, Lan Ling could not bear to part with him and asked softly, "Can I accompany senior brother there? Have a guess." Li Changshou smiled, and Lan Ling knew the answer right away. She responded while looking down. She was still reluctant to part with him. Li Changshou captured a few spiritual fish from the lake, put them into his sleeves, and flew to the heaven-breaking peak on the white cloud. Lan Ling stood quietly at the side of the lake and watched her senior brother's back view. She muttered in her heart, "Have a safe tribulation transcendence," and returned to her straw hut for cultivation after staying there for half a day. When he reached the Bai Fan Hall, Li Changshou found the elder that he was close with and told him that he wanted to visit the grave. Elder Wei, who was on duty that day, gladly allowed him to do so. Changshou, I remember that your family is in the northeast region of the South Continent. Coincidentally, an officer is going to the South Continent tomorrow for some matters. I'll let him take you along. Li Changshou took out a few spiritual fish from his sleeve. Elder, there is something I need to trouble you with. You little brat. Elder Wei beamed with joy immediately and took the spiritual fish, which had been wrapped with a ball of water. He took a porcelain jar out and put the spiritual fish inside to raise them temporarily. Some people are good, some love to drink, and some love delicacies. It's very hard to nurture them like this, and they can be said to be delicious snakeheads. Elder Wei said with a smile, Tell me, what are you thinking about? I want to seize this chance to put myself to the test for a few years in the South Continent, Li Changshou said in a low voice. Can you tell the officers not to go to my hometown to take a look and not to let them bring me there? Okay, you may leave. Elder Wei picked up the bamboo slip in front of him. I'll be saving a piece of bamboo. You're a good seedling for immortal cultivation, and you have an endless future from today onward. Remember, you cannot create trouble, go against the sect's rules, or be reluctant to part with the flourishing mortal world and let the mortal world blind your Tao heart. Li Changshou responded repeatedly and said with cupped fists, Thank you, Elder. This is just a trivial matter. Be on your way. Go early and come back early. Elder Wei gestured with his hand and took out a jade token, which was used for a disciple to go out, before handing it to Li Changshou. He told Li Changshou a few things, telling him not to go everywhere in places with many people in the mortal world, lest the turbid qi in the mortal world affected his Tao base. This elder was not pretending to be deeply concerned about Li Changshou. After all, Li Changshou had given his over 100 spiritual fish all these years. The disciples would often make an excuse of going back to their hometown and visiting the grave, but they would remain in the mortal world for several years and be caught by the sectarian officers. They would be reprimanded and have their monthly allowance deducted. Elder Wei did not find such things a surprise anymore. Li Changshou had given a few spiritual fish so that this elder would not record him visiting his parents, grabbing the book. Naturally, the sectarian officers would not check it. In Elder Wei's opinion, it was not a huge matter unless the young disciples wanted to enjoy the mortal world. However, this was very crucial in Li Changshou's tribulation transcendence plan, and it was a small step to make it a success. After leaving the heaven-breaking peak and flying southwards on the white cloud, Li Changshou very soon flew outside the mountains. He took the jade token and said that he needed to return to his hometown to visit the grave. The immortal, who was in charge of guarding the gates, told Li Changshou to be careful outside the sect. Li Changshou thanked him and flew out on the white cloud. 500 kilometers around the sect was actually still considered the land of the immortal Du sect. The spirit meridian ores, which were important in a few areas of the sect, were distributed in the southern area. Li Changshou flew 1,000 kilometers on the white cloud and landed in a forest. After he observed in the hidden corners of the forest for 2 days and confirmed that nobody from the sect had followed him, he then executed the earth escape technique and went southwards. On the way, he executed the earth escape when he met mountains, and the water escape when he met water. He also encountered cultivators fighting, ran into mountain demons having an internal fight, bumped into people seeking pleasure, and witnessed thousands of mortals having hand-to-hand battles. After he took a look around, he stopped in his tracks. Just like an unnoticeable ghost, Li Changshou walked 5,000 kilometers and another 5,000 kilometers. Half a month later, he reached a grassland in the northwest district of the South Continent, which was not far from the East Continent. Based on the sect's information, Li Changshou successfully found his parents' grave on a hillside. This grave was very exquisite. At one glance, he knew that a lot of money had been spent on it. The corner of the gravestone also had the symbol of the immortal Du sect, and an inscription was also written with eldest son Changshou. There were many weeds grown in front of the grave. Li Changshou took out a short knife and carefully cleared the surrounding of the grave. Then he knelt before the gravestone and offered fruits, meat, and fish that he had prepared on the way. He burned 2 stacks of joss paper, put 3 fragrant joss sticks, and kowtowed 4 times. He felt less restraint now. Afterward, he found an ordinary corner near his parents' grave and meditated and cultivated there. This was also considered visiting the grave. 7 days later, Li Changshou was once again prepared to set off on his journey and hurried to the pre-selected place for his tribulation transcendence. Where was the place? It was actually in the East Ocean. However, it was in the East Ocean of the South Continent. Since it was a territory in the mortal world, few cultivators appeared there. The mortal world was filled with turbid qi and disorder, and only a few demons were causing trouble. Most of the human race was gathered in the mortal world of the South Continent. The Dragon Palace did not have any stationed troops there, as they were afraid of bumping into the human race. At the mortal world's border, he found a hidden, ordinary island on the vast ocean. It was the best place for tribulation transcendence. Li Changshou took out a storage sack from his sleeve and took out something from it. It was a bunch of eyebrow pencils, face powder, and makeup materials that he had ground and invented. Then, he started to carefully disguise himself for the first time. He had a few foundational principles when it came to figures and looks. It was not enough if he only simply used the illusion technique or the illusion spell. He had to first use the makeup skills and physics to change his appearance. After that, he pasted a unique ultra-thin hydrating silk mask and used the illusion technique to transform into an old Taoist priest before he executed the illusion spell. This way, even if an expert saw through 4 layers of his spell, they could not see his true appearance. Most of the cultivators who roamed outside would use the illusion technique, so it was not strange for him to use it. After tidying up for half a day, Li Changshou turned in an old, cold-faced Taoist priest before he quietly used his earth escape and went to the East Ocean to search for a place for seclusion and tribulation transcendence. At the same time, at the common border of the South Ocean and East Ocean, an immortal glow was seen, which was similar to the immortal island of big turtles. In a treasured pond in the corner of the immortal island, the island pet that had recently arrived, which was a small azure dragon that was 100 feet long, was slowly observing the surroundings with eyes that had just peeked out of the water. The dragon spat out bubbles from its mouth with its eyes smiling. Very good. It was time for the Zenith Heaven Golden Immortal to talk about the Tao again. The nearby cultivating immortals had gone to listen to the Tao. I'm afraid you guys did not expect that when the prince was 6 years old, he had memorized the 4 C's, water roots, by heart. Since then, he has headed to the South Continent and headed towards the East Continent along the coast of the South Continent to hide his tracks through the turbid qi. Then, he reached the common border of the South and East Continents and hid his tracks as he headed to the East Continent. If the immortal Du sect did not have the guts to take in disciples, I can also go to the immortal sects of the 3 schools in the Middle Continent. The azure dragon laughed coldly and shrunk its body. Soon, it turned 3 feet long and swam toward the water seam at the bottom of the water. When it left the scope of the immortal island and was at the end of the island, a pair of big, terrifying turtle eyes opened in the area that resembled a golden turtle head.